The purple light inches toward Yuan-Chi's heart, and even the divine sovereigns know he won't survive this. Xia Qingyu's choice is sensible, but the betrayal cuts deeper than any blade. Like and subscribe before the next tribulation strikes. Now die. It was a chance so indifferent that even her killing intent had frozen completely. Yuan-Chi stared at her under the purple light. Even now, he didn't believe that she would kill him. But the purple light was slowly but surely moving closer to Yuan-Chi's heart. This power could easily kill even the likes of a divine sovereign, much less him. Just like what she had said earlier, it would take only an instant to reduce him into nothing, to leave no trace of him behind. Many people had closed their eyes. Xia Qingyu's choice was normal and sensible. There was no way Yuan-Chi was escaping death, and even if he was allowed to live, the God Emperor's greed would make him wish he was dead. If there was no way to keep him alive, then Xia Qingyu might as well kill him and cleanse her own reputation. On the other side, Qianai Yinger's face writhed with pain as golden light bathed her. She was losing her Brahma god divine power rapidly, and the process was absolutely irreversible. She sensed Yuan-Chi's approaching death due to the slave imprint. She struggled to raise her head and, "Ma's Ter!" A weak cry later, profound energy abruptly exploded from her body. The profound energy was no longer gold in color, but it was powerful, and it freed her from the 8th Brahma King's restriction immediately. She swung out her arm, and a beam of light cut through space in just an instant and hit Yuan-Chi. The light erupted and unleashed a strange form of spatial energy, and Yuan-Chi vanished from the spot just like that. "Ziying!" A heart-rending sound of destruction followed immediately after, and the space in front of Xia Qingyu turned into nothing in an instant. This terrible vacuum lasted for several breaths straight before space finally slithered back in fear. Had the Brahma monarch goddess been slower by even 1/10 of a second, not a single trace of Yuan-Chi would have been left in this world. It was proven that Xia Qingyu wasn't putting on a show. She had been seriously trying to kill him. "What?" Shocked silence filled the space for a moment. Absolutely no one had seen this coming. Everything had happened too fast. Although both her divine power and her slave imprint were falling apart, Qianai Yinger defied all expectations to break free from the 8th Brahma King's restriction and save Yuan-Chi. Worse, the item she struck Yuan-Chi with was clearly the Void Illusion Stone. A dozen or so voices growled in unison. Void Illusion Stones were extremely rare, and they were non-renewable resources. The fact that the Brahma monarch goddess had one with her was not unusual, but no one had expected this to happen. Had it been any other spatial artifact, its activation time would have been much slower. Anyone present could have interrupted it easily. Normally, a spatial artifact would leave behind a trace, but the Void Illusion Stone was instantaneous and untraceable. All 13 god emperors of the god realm were present in this place, but not one was able to trace it at all. "Not good!" A cry broke out among the divine masters as a heavy weight settled on everyone's faces. They quickly moved toward the spot Yuan-Chi had disappeared from and tried to track him, but it was obviously an impossible task. "We cannot let him escape," Honorable Tai Yu declared. Yuan-Chi possessed the heretic god's divine power and the sky poison pearl. If he were allowed to escape to the northern divine region, it was impossible to tell what kind of devil he would transform into just looking at the treatment he received today and the sheer amount of hatred he displayed. Yuan-Chi was completely suppressed, and every divine master and god emperor had had their sights on him. He didn't even have the chance to use his own Void Illusion Stone. Who would have thought that something like this could happen? The purple light in Xia Qingyu's hand vanished before she shot Qianai Yinger an indifferent glance. "You sure raised a good daughter, Brahma Heaven God Emperor. If anything bad were to happen in the future, you'll be the first person to suffer our wrath." Qianai Fanchen stared darkly at his 8th Brahma King. This time, the latter used all his power to hold down Qianai Yinger before bending his back. This subordinate requests to be punished severely for his terrible mistake. "Slave imprints truly are amazing," said the Southern Sea God Emperor while smiling at Qianai Yinger. "To think that a lady goddess like Yinger could do so much to protect her master, truly amazing." "Why do you say that? Have you never implanted a slave imprint on anyone?" Qianai Fanchen asked. "Ridiculous," the Southern Sea God Emperor snorted disdainfully. "Why would I need a heretical object like that to get the woman I want? That being said," he shot Qianai Yinger a glance, but he didn't say anything. "Don't worry," Qianai Fanchen suddenly said in a soft voice. "Yuan-Chi never touched her." The Southern Sea God Emperor abruptly turned to look at him. His reaction seemed unusually strong for some reason. If Ni Fanchen was anyone else, the Southern Sea God Emperor would never believe them. He narrowed his eyes a little and asked, "May I know why you've suddenly decided to change your mind, Brahma Heaven God Emperor? Wise it may be. Is that important?" Ni Fanchen replied with a smile. "No, it is not. It isn't important at all. Ha 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 ha." The Southern Sea God Emperor laughed loudly in response. Bang. One last golden burst erupted from Ni Yinger before everything became still. With the destruction of her Brahma God, divine power, and Brahma soul, the slave imprint inside her had crumbled away completely. Ni Yinger had finally obtained complete freedom of her soul. Ni Yinger basically had two souls because she cultivated the Brahma soul. As a result, the slave imprint was rooted in both her true soul and her Brahma soul. That was why destroying either soul would cause the slave imprint to lose its foundation and collapse upon itself. This was the last resort she had kept for herself. It was the last resort that she would use only if she had no other choice. Her Brahma soul was destroyed, and her true soul had suffered huge damage. When her Brahma God divine power left her completely, Ni Yinger finally lost consciousness. But she remembered everything that had happened. Meanwhile, the dragon monarch said in a dignified voice, "Send word to all realms to find the devil person Yuan Qi. Once he's discovered, he may be killed on the spot. Anyone who attempts to protect or conceal him will be executed as if they're a devil themselves." The dragon monarch's order was answered affirmatively by everyone. Yuan Qi's surprise escape due to Ni Yinger had left a shadow in everyone's heart, except the Eternal Heaven God Emperor. He actually let out a small sigh of relief after the incident. Perhaps Yuan Qi's survival had helped to alleviate some of his guilt. "My lord," Honorable Tai Yu whispered to him, "if Yuan Qi is allowed to escape to the northern divine region with his potential, the consequences will be unimaginable. Didn't you mention that you'd learned of his birthplace some time ago? Yuan Qi values relationships deeply, and he loves his planet a lot. He wouldn't have been willing to give up on staying in the God realm otherwise. Why don't we use this to force him out of hiding?" The Eternal Heaven God Emperor frowned deeply before saying, "We will not. But we will not speak of this again." The Eternal Heaven God Emperor's voice grew firmer. "Yes, my lord." Honorable Tai Yu stopped talking. At the side, Ni Fanchen quietly shot a glance at the duo. Although the Eternal Heaven God Emperor and Honorable Tai Yu were conversing quietly, he had heard every word they said. His eyes flashed eerily as he stared at the unconscious Ni Yinger. He then looked at his Brahma kings and ordered, "Take Yinger home and build a Brahma heart formation yourselves. Make sure she awakes as soon as possible." "Yes, my lord." The Brahma kings received the order. One by one, the people started leaving the easternmost region of the primal chaos. The dragon monarch would be staying at the eastern divine region temporarily to wait for news regarding Yuan Qi. Even the southern sea god emperor had temporarily stayed behind in the eastern divine region. Although he was waiting for good news from the Brahma monarch god realm, Yuan Qi no longer mattered to him. Even his seething hatred and jealousy for the young man had completely vanished. Prior to their departure, a lot of people turned back to look at the wall of primal chaos. There was no longer a crimson crack or a crimson passage to be seen. The heaven-smiting devil emperor had left permanently, and the evil infant had been taken by surprise and thrown out of the primal chaos. Everyone could see that the fate of primal chaos had changed completely. However, no one realized yet that a dark shadow, even more terrible than the returned devil emperor, was silently moving toward the three divine regions. The return of the heaven-smiting devil emperor hadn't been spread, and not a word of Yuan Qi's heroic acts had been leaked to the public. However, the rumors that he was a devil person quickly spread through all three divine regions and caused quite a stir. At the same time, the warrant for devil person Yuan Qi was sent out, causing countless star realms to jump into action. It was because the reward for capturing or killing devil person Yuan Qi was as high as the bounty for the evil infant, but the difficulty and risk involved were much more lower. Very few people except the highest level knew that the devil person everyone was hunting was also the God-child Messiah whose praises were sung by both the realm kings and the God emperors just yesterday. Eastern Divine Region, Glazed Light Realm. A profound formation that looked like screens of pure water was operating in silence, and Yuan Qi was lying inside it. The profound light isolated the unconscious young man's aura from the outside world, keeping him hidden. His sleep didn't look peaceful, however. His teeth were clenched together so hard that blood kept pouring down the corner of his lips. Both his body and his facial features kept twitching. His fingers especially were clenched so tightly for so long that they were completely white. He had been like this for almost 24 hours now. Crack, crack, crack. The sound of his teeth breaking kept coming from his mouth, and another trail of blood flowed down the corner of his lips, until a hand appeared and wiped it away for him softly. She could sense the bone-deep hatred in every molecule of his blood. "Big brother Yuan-Chi," the girl called out softly. She felt like her heart was bleeding nonstop as she stared at his painful and hateful face. She turned away again, unable to bear the sight of his expression. Why did this happen? Why did this happen? She had asked herself the same question countless times already, but she still couldn't find an answer, or rather, she was unable to understand or accept the answer she already knew. A series of heavy footsteps started as Shui Qianheng and Shui Yingyu approached the forlorn girl. Their expressions turned complicated when they saw how distracted and sorrowful she was. "Is he still asleep?" Shui Yingyu asked. Shui Meiyin didn't react to his question at all. Her normal cheer had completely fled her body, and she looked so wan that it was heartbreaking. "Meiyin," Shui Qianheng finally said in a heavy tone, "we need to send him away soon. My arrogance led to me revealing to them about your wedding, and it's only a matter of time before they come searching for him." Shui Meiyin shook her head slightly and replied, "Where can he go if he leaves this place?" "He has to leave," Shui Qianheng said. "It's dangerous for both him and us if we keep him around any longer. He was risking his entire realm just by taking Yuan-Chi in. One might say that he had repaid all the debt he owed Yuan-Chi. Even if he was willing to risk his realm further, 24 hours was their absolute limit." Shui Meiyin didn't object to his statement. She said quietly, "Once he wakes up, I'll send him away myself." She could feel in her divine, stainless soul that Yuan-Chi wasn't really unconscious. He had trapped his own consciousness inside a pitch-black prison. It was because he couldn't accept everything that had happened. No one could. Shui Qianheng wanted to say something more, but Shui Yingyu put a hand in front of him and shook her head. Finally, Shui Qianheng moved his lips but simply let out a sigh. He stopped talking, but he didn't leave. Realm had ultimately decided to use the voice of Eternal Heaven to search for Yuan-Chi's whereabouts. A day went by without any news whatsoever. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor had been sitting quietly inside the main hall for the whole day. He hadn't even bothered to entertain the Dragon Monarch, a guest who had decided to stay at the Eternal Heaven realm temporarily. What was once deep respect had turned into bone-deep anger and hatred. Yuan-Chi owed him a favor, but the favor he owed Yuan-Chi was far bigger than the former. After the Devil Emperor had returned to the primal chaos, Yuan-Chi had been busy with the task of saving the world from destruction. Even the heretic god Divine Power was a seed that ultimately led to the saving of the world. Yuan-Chi deserved the title God Child Messiah, no matter what. If it wasn't for him, the God realm would have turned into a purgatory of calamities already. Just the same, the evil infant wouldn't be inactive for 3 whole years if it wasn't for him. Everything had changed the moment he struck the evil infant. Did he regret his decision? No, he didn't. He would have made the same choice even if he had a second chance. It was true that the evil infant had stopped the devil gods from invading the primal chaos and saved the God realm, but he still wouldn't have let go of that chance to eliminate her once and for all. He did have one regret, though. Yuan-Chi's current predicament wasn't what he had wanted to see. "My lord," Honorable Tai Yu walked in and bowed from afar. "Is there news of Yuan-Chi yet?" the Eternal Heaven God Emperor asked weakly. "Not yet, my lord," Honorable Tai Yu replied. "Then you may leave," the Eternal Heaven God Emperor said. "Don't ask about Yuan-Chi's birthplace again. It makes us no different from a devil person." "That isn't why I'm here, my lord," Honorable Tai Yu said. "The Heavenly Mystery 3 elders, Moyu, Moen, and Majai has come to see you. They say that they have something important they must inform you of no matter what, something that relates to the peace of the God realm." The Eternal Heaven God Emperor raised his eyebrows a bit. The Heavenly Mystery 3 elders had never spoken uselessly, and their abrupt visit must carry great meaning. "Invite them in." The Heavenly Mystery 3 elders walked in shoulder to shoulder. Their footsteps were hurried, and there was none of their usual steadiness and gracefulness. There was even darkness lurking behind their serious expressions. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor had known the Heavenly Mystery 3 elders for many years, but he had never seen them act like this. He asked, "What has happened to prompt such a sudden visit, my friends?" "It's about Yuan-Chi," the head of the Heavenly Mystery Three Elders, said. The Heavenly Mystery Realm was the most unique realm of all upper realms. Naturally, there was nothing that escaped their knowledge. I thought that might be the case. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor sighed deeply before asking, Masters, can you tell me if my choice is correct or not? Time cannot be reversed, what's done is done. We are past the point of right or wrong already, Eternal Heaven God Emperor. Moyu said, Please look at this. He raised his palms slightly, and a huge white book appeared after a flash of profound energy. The book was at least 10 meters wide, and it was glowing gently. An ancient and holy aura emanated from it. The Heavenly Mystery God Canon? The Eternal Heaven God Emperor frowned slightly before asking, Have you glimpsed another important fate? No. Moyu shook his head before opening the first page of the Heavenly Mystery God Canon. Back at the Profound God Convention, the Heavenly Mystery Three Elders had shouted the 4 words, Child of the Heavens. After Yuan Qi had attracted a 9-stage lightning tribulation and won the conferred God battle. After that, they revealed the prophecy regarding the return of the true God and stunned all profound practitioners. They had boldly faced the people's doubts and opened the first page of the Heavenly Mystery God Canon. What should have been a blank page had turned into a prophecy divined by the Heavenly Mystery Realm's great ancestor, Heaoshan himself. After the Heavenly Mystery, 3 elders had showered it with the power of heaven's fate. Today, the Heavenly Mystery Three Elders were going to do the same thing again. They stretched out their arms and summoned a special profound energy that was unique to the Heavenly Mystery Realm inside their palms. The inscription on the first page of the Heavenly Mystery God Canon appeared before their eyes once more. When the 9-stage heavenly tribulation appears, the true God will return. Back at the conferred God stage, it was this prophecy that had brought Yuan Qi to the center of the limelight. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor and the Brahma Heaven God Emperor had clashed against one another for the right to take him in as their direct disciple. God Emperor Shishin had wanted to take him back to the southern divine region. The Brahma Heaven God Emperor had offered to wed his daughter to Yuan Qi, and the Dragon Monarch had adopted him right in front of everyone. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor felt a surge of complex emotions as he recalled the past. He said, This old one hasn't forgotten about the prophecy, of course. Yuan Qi is the only bearer of the creation god's inheritance, so it's no surprise that he would be the one to break our world's current limit. Great Ancestor Heaoshan's prophecies remain true to the end. No, this is just the first half of our ancestor's prophecy. There is a second half that we haven't shown anyone, Moyu said seriously. Oh, the Eternal Heaven God Emperor was about to ask what it was when his eyes were suddenly drawn to the page. 2 new lines appeared under that well-known prophecy. Virtue will lead to eternal peace. Evil will bring the carnage of a devil god. There was a short silence, and the Eternal Heaven God Emperor suddenly rose to his feet in shock. The last 2 lines of the prophecy had appeared to us during the Profound God Convention. However, Yuan Qi was neither evil nor devilish at the time, and he had clear eyes and a pure aura despite his unyielding character. That is why we haven't made public the last 2 lines of this prophecy. Later on, Yuan Qi's actions perfectly matched the line, Virtue will lead to eternal peace. The evil infant awoke, the Devil Emperor returned, and the Devil Gods were coming, but because of him, the Devil Emperor willingly left primal chaos and stopped the Devil Gods from showing, and the evil infant was willing to stay in the lower realms and avoid conflict with the God realm forever. The Great Ancestor's prophecy is perfectly true. As long as Yuan Qi is alive, the world can achieve eternal peace. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor's lips started trembling, then his hands, then his entire body. But now, Yuan Qi has turned into a devil. Eternal Heaven God Emperor, do you understand what this means? Shaking like a leaf, the Eternal Heaven God Emperor's pupils slowly lost color. Evil will bring the carnage of a devil god. Yesterday, Yuan Qi's sadness, fury, and hatred had reached a critical limit and turned into pure evil. The darkness profound energy had appeared after that. It was a reflection of the last line of the prophecy. Moen said, We believe that Yuan Qi wasn't a devil person at the beginning, and he has never had darkness profound energy. Devil people are devil beings whose hearts have been twisted by evil, and all they desire is chaos and disaster. If Yuan Qi was a devil person, he would never have done everything in his power to save the God realm. That is why we believe that his darkness profound energy came to him just yesterday. Darkness profound energy was negative profound energy. When a living being's negative emotions reach a certain limit, It would distort their profound energy and turn it into darkness profound energy. This transformation was incredibly rare, but it wasn't like it had never happened in the God realm's history. In fact, this was common knowledge among the higher realms. In other words, Yuan Qi's sudden transformation into a devil person wasn't because he was a devil person from the start. It was because they had pushed him over the line. The eternal heaven god emperor sank back into his chair heavily, his complexion turning deathly pale rapidly. He had no doubt that the heavenly mystery three elders were telling him the truth. In fact, their theory that Yuan Qi wasn't originally a devil person had echoed perfectly with his own thoughts. He had interacted with Yuan Qi many times in the past, and most of the god emperors and the divine masters in the god realm had met him before. If he really had darkness profound energy, one of them would have noticed something. Moreover, Yuan Qi was acknowledged by the Dragon Queen of the Western Divine Region herself, and he could cultivate light profound energy. One must have the legendary sacred body, or sacred heart, to cultivate light profound energy. And Yuan Qi had purified the evil infant devilish energy inside his body with light profound energy before. It was impossible to fake something like that. There was no way he was a devil person at the time. Did he really drive a person with a sacred heart, a man who was prophesied to bring eternal peace to the world, into a devil person? Was I wrong, was I wrong? He muttered in a daze. The eternal heaven god emperor, right or wrong no longer matters at this point, Moyu said heavily. Even if you were, you should work to stop it from growing as much and as soon as possible. We absolutely cannot allow the carnage of the devil god to happen. In other words, Mage added, we must do everything in our power to kill Yuan Qi. There's no changing the fact that he's a devil, so we absolutely cannot allow him time to grow further. We cannot. The eternal heaven god emperor's eyes focused at once. He abruptly rose to his feet and shouted, Tai Yu! Honorable Tai Yu appeared in a flash. Ready a ship immediately. Honorable Tai Yu realized that the eternal heaven god emperor's depression was gone. The aura and the look in his eyes had also surprised him. He asked, Yes, my lord, where are we headed to? The eternal heaven god emperor said slowly, We'll be traveling to Blue Pole Star. Honorable Tai Yu frowned. This was the first time he had heard of this planet's name. However, he quickly realized what the eternal heaven god emperor was saying and exclaimed in shock. Is that the devil person's birthplace? Make preparations immediately. The eternal heaven god emperor nodded slightly before saying harshly, and spread the news in the shortest amount of time possible. Go now. Honorable Tai Yu immediately left with his orders. A dark shadow loomed over the eternal heaven god emperor, but his body was shaking and covered in cold sweat. He looked like he just had a terrible illness. Outside of the Eastern Divine Region, those who had never come into contact with a member of the heavenly mystery realm didn't believe in their mystique. Some even thought that it was a load of nonsense. However, the heavenly mystery realm was practically legendary within the Eastern Divine Region. The eternal heaven god realm especially trusted their prophecies almost unconditionally. It was because the great ancestor of the eternal heaven realm was best friends with the great ancestor of the heavenly mystery realm. The latter's very first prophecy was that the eternal heaven realm would become a king realm, and none of the heavenly mystery realm's prophecies had missed the mark since. In fact, the reason the eternal heaven god emperor valued Yuan Qi as much as he did was largely because of the phrase, the true god will return. That was why he couldn't sit by and ignore the line, evil will bring the carnage of a devil god. He was the one who drove Yuan Qi into transforming into a devil. If this terrifying prophecy were to come true, then he would undoubtedly become the ultimate sinner of the god realm for eternity. Brahma Monarch God Realm. Inside the Brahma Heart Formation, Kayana Yinger had finally recovered from her coma. The destruction of her Brahma soul had dealt terrible damage to her true soul. Although she was healed by the Brahma Heart Formation, and she was unconscious for an entire day, it was impossible to heal completely. Kayana Fanshin had been waiting by her side all this time. When he sensed that Kayana Yinger had awakened, he finally turned around to see her. Royal Father, said Kayana Yinger while forcing herself to get up. Her voice was still weak, but her pupils had regained their intimidating pressure. Yinger has committed a grave mistake. Of course, the grave mistake she was referring to was sending Yuan Qi away with the Void Illusion Stone while she was still enthralled by the slave imprint. That's no longer important, Kayana Fanshin said. Tell me, where is Yuan Qi's birthplace? Right after he asked the question, a person entered the room in a flash and bowed behind Kayana Fanshin. The person said urgently, "My lord, the Eternal Heaven God Realm has sent us an urgent message. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor is now on the way to Yuan Qi's birthplace to force the devil person Yuan Qi into showing himself. It seems to be a planet called Blue Pole Star to the east." Xianxia Fanshan frowned deeply when he heard this. His original plan was to travel to Yuan Qi's birthplace in secret after obtaining its whereabouts from Xianxia Yinger. It didn't take a genius to figure out Yuan Qi's birthplace couldn't be ordinary. It might very well be hiding a terrible secret. He didn't expect the Eternal Heaven God Emperor to change his mind so suddenly and disrupt his plans. "Prepare a ship immediately," Xianxia Fanshan said. "We'll be chasing the Eternal Heaven God Emperor." Very soon, a profound ship flew out of the Brahma Monarch God Realm and chased after the Eternal Heaven God Realm's profound ship. He wasn't the only one. Countless high-level profound ships were also departing from their respective star realms and flying in the same direction, to where the Blue Pole Star was. King Yu was sitting quietly inside a purple profound formation at the Moon Emperor's bedchambers. The purple light touching her exquisite features made her look even more fantastic than before. It was at this moment a girl appeared in front of her and bowed. "Master, Lion Yu has something to report," Xia King Yu asked. "Do you have news regarding Yuan Qi already?" "No," Lion Yu replied. "However, the Eternal Heaven God Realm just sent word saying that the Eternal Heaven God Emperor and the Dragon Monarch are traveling to a planet called Blue Pole Star, an eighth of an hour ago." Xia King Yu abruptly opened her eyes as something purple flashed across them. The glow of the profound formation died away. She got up to her feet and walked outside, ordering, "Tell Yue Wuji to join me. We're heading out." "Yes." Lion Yu received her order, but there was a flash of doubt in her eyes. The Moon God Emperor usually took her, Jin Yue or Yao Yue, whenever she was heading out. They were the Moon God Emperor's private servants, and a glance from her was all it took to transmit her will. But this time she was asking for Golden Moon God Yue Wuji. What was happening? "Jasmine, you will have to stay with me on the Blue Pole Star. Perhaps you will never be able to lay a single foot in the God Realm for the rest of your life. You wouldn't mind that, would you?" "HMPH, you've already made the decision for me. What else can I do? Answer me, Yuan Qi, do you think that this world is worth my sacrifice? The evil infant's death will bring peace to the world. How is he wrong?" Crack, crack, crack. The more Yuan Qi gritted his teeth, the deeper his soul sank into darkness. A delicate figure and her young and true voice appeared from the darkness. "Wuxin, do you want Daddy to become a hero who saves the world?" "I don't want a hero who is going to save the world, I only want Daddy." Wu Xin. A hero who saves the world. Heh, what a joke. Suddenly, he felt a stab of pain from the dark world of the souls. He could hear Xianxia Fanshan say, "Yinger has cultivated an independent Brahma soul, just like me, and her slave imprint is embedded inside her Brahma soul." His soul suddenly started struggling madly like it was pierced by a million poison barbs. "Wuxin," he shouted and sat up. His entire body was drenched in cold sweat. "Ah!" A surprised cry came from the side, and he turned sideways to see the countenance of a girl just inches away from him. "Big brother Yuan Qi, you're awake, you're finally awake," she shouted emotionally as tears welled inside her eyes. It was Shui Meiyan. Shui Qianheng and Shui Yingyu were also present. He shook his head strongly to clear it. His entire body racked in terrible pain. How did I come here?" Qianxia Yinger had thrown a void illusion stone at him and teleported him away. However, her profound strength was naturally forceful, and she had had to act in a hurry. Her Brahma God divine power was also departing her, making it incredibly difficult to control her own power. As a result, Yuan Qi was knocked out the moment the void illusion stone struck him and released its spatial divine energy. Therefore, he himself had no idea where he was teleported to. That life-saving toss would have blown a hole in a normal divine king. The reason it didn't was because he had the body of a dragon god. Shui Meiyan wiped her tears away before wiping the sweat on his forehead gently. She replied, "Someone sent Big Sis a sound transmission and brought you here. Don't worry, no one saw anything in the process." "Who was it?" Yuan Qi looked up at Shui Yingyu. How many people in the world would dare protect him like this after his darkness profound energy was exposed? And the three strongest god emperors in the world had decided to oppose him. "They told me to keep quiet about their identity," Shui Yingyu said with a complicated expression on her face. "They only told me to pass on one message, head to the northern divine region and never return." Yuan Qi's mind was in chaos right now. He was incapable of calming himself down to think. Shui Qianheng chose this moment to speak up. Now that you're awake, you should leave here as soon as possible. All three divine regions are searching for you right now, and the glazed light realm is undoubtedly one of the most dangerous places for you to be right now. You should know this. It may seem a bit cruel, but the northern divine region is the only place left you can go right now. In the God realm, the northern divine region was only called the Devil region. Yuan Qi shakily got to his feet. Although his entire body was numb and hurting, it wasn't so bad that he couldn't move at all. "Thank you for taking me in. I will leave right away." Shui Qianheng had taken him in and kept him hidden instead of turning him in. He had every reason to leave knowing just how big of a risk the Realm King was taking. "You have the ability to conceal yourself. If you're careful, you should be able to cover your tracks. Go. There's nothing else I can do to help," Shui Qianheng said with a sigh. Then he hesitated for a moment before giving in to his curiosity. "There's one thing that I'd like to ask you about. When did you offend the Dragon Monarch?" Although he wasn't present in the scene yesterday, he had heard practically everything that had happened. Shui Qianheng wasn't surprised that the strongest God Emperor of the Eastern Divine Region and the Southern Divine Region would turn against Yuan Qi immediately after the evil infant was gone. But the Dragon Monarch, he never expected the supreme ruler of the primal chaos to rebuke Yuan Qi as well. The Dragon Monarch obviously admired Yuan Qi back then. He had even declared his intention to adopt Yuan Qi in public, which caused a huge commotion for a while. When Yuan Qi left the Eastern Divine Region, he was even granted stay at the Dragon God realm and taught the light profound energy by the Dragon Queen herself. Although Yuan Qi's words and actions had offended the Eternal Heaven God Emperor gravely, he did save the world, and the Eternal Heaven God Emperor had broken his promise. All the Dragon Monarch needed to do was speak impartially. He didn't even need to take anyone's side, and his word would have dwarfed the Brahma Heaven God Emperor and the Southern Sea God Emperor's words instantly. None of this tragedy would have happened if he did. But not only did he not protect Yuan Qi, he even sided with the Brahma Heaven God Emperor and the Southern Sea God Emperor to oppress Yuan Qi. His cry for justice was obviously a ploy to force everyone present to stand on the opposite side of Yuan Qi, driving him into a most ironic and dismal situation. Even if some of them might sympathize with Yuan Qi's situation, no one was bold enough to disobey the three strongest God Emperors of the Divine Regions. If the Eternal Heaven God Emperor was the cause, then the Dragon Monarch was undoubtedly the biggest catalyst that had hastened Yuan Qi's fall. "I've never offended him even once in my life," Xianxia's figure flashed before his eyes as Yuan Qi answered, "but I think I know why he did this." Shui Qianheng stopped asking any further questions. He waved his hand and dispelled the dozen barriers surrounding them in an instant. "Go!" Yuan Qi had saved the God realm, and everyone owed him their lives. No one had the right to denounce him, much less organize a hunt to kill him, but the most powerful people in the world had said he was wrong and that he deserved death, so that was the fate he was condemned to. The Dragon God realm, the Brahma Monarch God realm, and the Southern Sea God realm were the three strongest king realms in the God realm. Anything they agreed on was the undeniable truth, no matter how ridiculous or saddening it might be. After all, this was a world that valued strength above everything else since time immemorial. "Big brother Yuan Qi," Shui Meiyan held Yuan Qi's palm, but all she felt from it was iciness and cold. "Are you really going to the Northern Divine Region? I'll be heading back to my planet first." The light in Yuan Qi's eyes was dim, and his voice sounded as weak as fading mist. "Kaina Yinger's slave imprint is probably gone. She knows where my planet and my family are, so I need to hide them as soon as possible." It was at this moment Shui Qianheng suddenly shouted, "What?" Yuan Qi, Shui Yingyu, and Shui Meiyan all turned to look at Shui Qianheng in surprise. Shui Qianheng was holding his hand against his forehead. He was clearly receiving a transmission from someone. His expression turned absolutely ugly as he said, "When did this happen?" "It's almost been 2 hours since we received the message," said the voice on the other side of the transmission. "Why did you wait until now to tell me?" Shui Qianheng said angrily. "But I've messaged you a dozen of times already." At number %. It was only now Shui Qianheng recalled that he had created a dozen or so isolation barriers to ensure that Yuan Qi was perfectly concealed. When his subordinate had tried to inform him about this, he was inside the barrier himself. It was no wonder that the sound transmissions had failed. "Yuan Qi," Shui Qianheng abruptly looked at Yuan Qi and asked urgently, "Is your birthplace called Blue Pole Star?" Yuan Qi's expression changed drastically. Any wishful thinking Shui Qianheng might have had in his mind fled away when he saw Yuan Qi's expression. He said, "You can't go back. The Dragon Monarch and the Eternal Heaven God Emperor left to go to the Blue Pole Star 2 hours ago and informed everyone about its location." Crack. "What did you say?" Yuan Qi's eyes turned completely red. His fingers clenched so tightly and abruptly that the resulting pop was almost deafening to the ear. He dashed out frenziedly towards the exit in the next instant. Boom! However, a surge of profound energy fell from above and kept Yuan Qi fully suppressed. Shui Qianheng's palm landed on Yuan Qi's shoulder like a mountain before he said, "Where are you going? Are you trying to kill yourself? Don't you see that they're trying to force you to show yourself?" Shui Qianheng could understand why the Eternal Heaven God Emperor had decided to take out the evil infant. He even approved of it. But he couldn't understand why the most righteous and upstanding God realm in the world would resort to something as despicable as holding a person's planet and family hostage, especially when Yuan Qi had just saved the entire world from doom. What a joke, what a complete joke. "Let go." Veins popped out all over Yuan Qi's body, his finger joints were deathly white, and his bloodshot eyes nearly exploded from sheer pressure. But no matter how he tried, it was impossible for him to escape Shui Qianheng's strength. "You'll get your ass to the northern divine region right now if you still have a shred of sense left in you," Shui Qianheng said heartlessly. "Are you telling me to watch them die and do nothing?" Yuan Qi's words were bloody and furious. "That's still better than you dying together with them." Shui Qianheng shouted, "Do you think they'll let the family of a devil person go free just because you show your face? Let go, let go." Bang. A dozen or so blood vessels exploded from Yuan Qi's body. He bled like a pig as his voice and expression became as distorted as a monster's. "Let me go, or I'll kill you." He couldn't imagine what would happen to his parents, wives, and daughter if they were to fall into those people's hands. Not even for a second. "We can talk about killing me after you've spent a couple of years in the northern divine region," said Shui Qianheng as he applied even more strength into his grip. Suddenly, Shui Meiyan said, "Daddy, let him go." Her sudden interruption caught Shui Qianheng off guard. "Daddy, please let big brother Yuan Qi go." Shui Meiyan was crying, but her voice sounded exceptionally firm. "Please let him go." Shui Qianheng's brows trembled for a moment, but in the end he let out a long sigh and withdrew his power. Yuan Qi hit the ground hard as he spent a moment to catch his own breath. He was just about to get back up to his feet when a soft, delicate body lay on his back and held him gently. "Big brother Yuan Qi," Shui Meiyan's voice rang beside his ears like a dream. "I know how much you love your family and your daughter. I know that you'll never abandon them even if you must pay with your own life. That is the big brother Yuan Qi I love the most." Yuan Qi was shaking all over and gritting his teeth so hard that they threatened to break. His blood and sweat mixed together as they rolled off his body and stained the girl's black dress. "No matter how the world sees you, you'll always be the best person to ever exist in my heart. So please stay alive. You and all your loved ones must all stay alive, okay?" A trail of sudden, fading warmth touched his blood-stained back. Turning around, Yuan Qi lifted his hands to touch the girl's head, but he stopped at the last moment and placed them on her shoulders instead. Then, he slowly but firmly pushed her away. He jumped up to the sky and summoned the vanishing moon's celestial palace and flew off in a deafening sonic boom. Shui Meiyan pressed a hand to her chest and closed her eyes. She whispered to herself, "Please stay alive. Royal Father, do you want to follow him?" Shui Yingyu stared at the spot Yuan Qi had vanished to. "It's already too late," Shui Qianheng said with a sigh. The vanishing moon celestial palace was one of the fastest profound ships in the world, and it outstripped even the best profound ship of the glazed light realm. By the time they got to the blue pole star, everything would have ended already. Shui Qianheng looked at the dark sky above his head and muttered in a daze, "This period will never be recorded in the history of the God realm. We witnessed the descent of a true child of heaven, but we've also witnessed the most ridiculous and shameful history, or even era, of the God realm. Realm's fastest profound arc. Even a God Emperor would be hard-pressed to chase it. Space was infinitely vast, and the vanishing moon celestial palace looked like a starry scar as it penetrated layer upon layer of space. But Yuan Qi still felt that it was moving too slow. "Faster, please move faster." The vanishing moon celestial palace had no life or consciousness, but Yuan Qi kept chanting for it to move faster like a mantra. His hands were clenched, his body was shaking, and his expression was horribly twisted from the very beginning. All he could do now was pray that he would be faster than his enemies. and that he would be able to save his family before the God realm reached them. However, according to Xiu Qianheng, it had been 2 hours since they departed. The vanishing moon's celestial palace was fast, but it was almost impossible to fill up such a time gap. Sweat rolled down his body like the rain. His brain kept replaying everything that had happened yesterday, causing blood to seep between his fingers. "Master, you don't need to worry too much. It might not necessarily be true." He Ling kept trying to console Yuan-Chi despite knowing how useless her words were. "They are a king realm. They wouldn't do such a thing. It has to be a mistake." The Eternal Heaven God Realm was a sacred name. He Ling might hate the Brahma Monarch God Realm, but just like everyone else living in the Eastern Divine Region, she had always thought of the Eternal Heaven God Realm as the holiest, most respectable land in the Eastern Divine Region. She truly didn't want to believe that this was happening from the bottom of her heart. Even Xiu Qianheng, with over 10,000 years of life experience, had been horrified and shocked by this turn of events. Yuan-Chi didn't react to her words at all. Fear had overwhelmed his fury and hatred completely. Fear was occupying every corner of his body and cells. He almost couldn't feel anything besides fear, and he didn't try to imagine the terrible consequences that might happen at all. If he did, even he couldn't tell what he might do next. To the east of the Eastern Divine Region, where the blue pole star lay. A star system from the lower realms was a place that not even the divine way profound practitioners of a lower star realm were willing to hang around, much less set foot on its planets. It was because there was absolutely no value in exploring them. But today, profound arcs and profound ships kept entering this star system one after another. Moreover, every one of these vessels was famous in the God realm. Even the lowest-ranking person in the ship was the absolute ruler of a star realm. For some reason, these people had all decided to gather here today, a star system they usually wouldn't deign to even glance at. The aura here was so thin and poor that it even made them feel intensely uncomfortable. Even lingering around in this star system would normally bring shame to them. The star system wasn't big, and it didn't hold many planets. However, there was one planet that caught everyone's attention even when it was still far away. It was a blue-colored planet. It looked like an azure pearl sitting in the middle of a group of gloomy-looking, black, or scarlet-colored planets. It was undoubtedly the brightest and prettiest planet of this star system. Pale blue light refracted onto the surface of the vessels as they drew closer. Despite clearly being a low-level planet, it gave of a dreamlike beauty for some reason. The foremost profound ship came to a halt, causing the vessels behind it to stop as well. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor and the Dragon Monarch slowly walked out of their profound ship. They were quickly followed by countless important people. Everyone was staring at the azure-colored planet right in front of them, their eyes flashing with different emotions. "Is that the planet Yuan-Chi came from?" the Dragon Monarch asked. He couldn't remember the last time he had come into contact with such a lousy plane, but he had come anyway to fulfill his mission. "Amen." The Eternal Heaven God Emperor nodded. His expression looked complicated, but there was also a hint of grim determination behind it. "This planet is called the Blue Pole Star, and it's without a doubt Yuan-Chi's birthplace. It's made of 97% water and 3% land. Obviously, it suffered great devastation a long time ago. Moreover, this planet shows no sign of collapse despite being made up of 3% land only. There must be something unusual with it." Everyone heard the Eternal Heaven God Emperor's explanation clearly. It was no wonder that the planet was as blue as it was. It was almost completely made up of sea. "Color me curious," the Dragon Monarch said, "but how did you know this place? Did Yuan-Chi tell you himself?" "No," the Eternal Heaven God Emperor replied. "It was the Eternal Heaven Pearl." "Oh," the Dragon Monarch shot him a sideways glance. "In truth, Yuan-Chi's birthplace came to me as a complete coincidence," the Eternal Heaven God Emperor said. "The heaven-smiting Devil Emperor's movements probably had a direct impact on the fate of the primal chaos. Although her aura is undetectable to the likes of us, the Eternal Heaven Pearl is an exception. The Eternal Heaven Pearl was one of the profound heavenly treasures. Therefore, it was on the same level as the Devil Emperor. So you're saying that the heaven-smiting Devil Emperor visited this planet after her return," the Dragon Monarch said thoughtfully. "That's not all. She spent most of her 2 months on this planet," the Eternal Heaven God Emperor said slowly. "There must be a reason why this lowly planet could draw such a level of affection from the heaven-smiting Devil Emperor. Since the Eternal Heaven Pearl commanded me to investigate it, I sent a couple of youngsters who hadn't entered the divine way, yet sporadically into several different locations on that planet. The group listened quietly to the Eternal Heaven God Emperor's explanation. No one knew that he had done such a thing until just now. But it was true the Eternal Heaven Pearl was the only object that could detect the heaven-smiting Devil Emperor's movements. They weren't able to locate the heaven-smiting Devil Emperor's exact location, and their time spent on that planet were mostly fruitless. They did come across one unexpected bit of news, however. They discovered that this planet was Yuan Qi's birthplace. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor let out a sigh before continuing. Yuan Qi is very well respected on this planet. He once saved both continents from disaster and was called Spiritual Master Yuan because of his achievements. Moreover, his parents are still alive and well, and he has several wives and a daughter. Several wives? A frown abruptly appeared on the Dragon Monarch's face. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor raised an eyebrow in response. He clearly wasn't expecting such a minor detail to catch the Dragon Monarch's attention. It is also true that the Moon God Emperor and Yuan Qi were formerly wed here. The God realm was quite far away from the blue pole star, and the Eternal Heaven Pearl had lost much of its energy. So it was impossible for the Eternal Heaven Pearl to detect Yuan Qi's aura despite its level. However, the heaven-smiting Devil Emperor's aura was completely unique, and she was the strongest existence in the world. Her uniqueness actually made it possible for the Eternal Heaven Pearl to track down her rough location. After that, the Eternal Heaven God Emperor withdrew all of his subordinates and sat on the information. He had never planned to tell this to anyone or approach the planet until today, when a reason he would never have accepted in the past prompted him to announce this location to public and appear on this planet in person. That's right. This is definitely the planet. A mild but imposing voice spoke as Xianxia Fanshan walked closer to the Dragon Monarch and the Eternal Heaven God Emperor. His eyes occasionally flashed with passion and menace as he stared at the azure planet in front of him. His interest in the planet had grown several times greater after listening to the Eternal Heaven God Emperor. After all, it was the planet that had given birth to a monster like Yuan Qi, and a place the heaven-smiting Devil Emperor had deigned to stay for an unbelievable amount of time. Hehe, Yinger must have awakened seeing that you're here. The Southern Sea God Emperor also stepped forward. The three strongest God Emperors of the entire God realm had once again come together in this poor star system. I was a bit late, unfortunately. This king wouldn't have minded touring the planet ahead of time, Xianxia Fanshan said with a smile. Xianxia Yinger had told him the exact location and characteristics of the blue pole star through her soul fragments, but, Eternal Heaven God Emperor, this king has a curious question to ask, Xianxia Fanshan said. It isn't like you to consent to a despicable ploy like this. Why have you decided to break your own rules? Consciously or not, Xianxia Fanshan had used the word ploy to describe the Eternal Heaven God Emperor's actions. Xianxia Fanshan was among the people who knew the Eternal Heaven God Emperor the most. That was why he had been caught off guard by his recent actions. Extraordinary circumstances often demand extraordinary means. He didn't say that it was the last two lines of the prophecy that had prompted his action. It was impossible to tell if he had chosen to conceal this because he didn't want to cause undue panic, or because he didn't want the world to know that he was the one who drove Yuan Qi onto the devil's path. Oh, Xianxia Fanshan smiled easily before replying. Xianxia is impressed with the Eternal Heaven God Emperor's decisiveness. However, it doesn't sound like you're planning to use Yuan Qi's family as hostage despite your knowledge of them. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor closed his eyes and said heavily, We'll wait for him for 9 hours. The news had been spread to every corner of the God realm, and Yuan Qi must have known this already. If he cared for his own family, then he would definitely show up on the Vanishing Moon's celestial palace around this time. What will you do if Yuan Qi doesn't show up in 9 hours? The Eternal Heaven God Emperor breathed deeply as his closed eyes trembled. Several breaths later, he opened his eyes to reveal a darkened gaze, saying, Then we'll take his family hostage. The same method would be almost, if not completely useless to most people in the God realm, but the Eternal Heaven God Emperor knew Yuan Qi well, and he knew that the latter would never abandon his family and escape on his own. After all, he had charged into the Star God realm alone for the Heavenly Slaughter Star God several years ago. However, not even 1,000,000, shameless and despicable would be enough to describe this ploy, and he, the Eternal Heaven God Emperor, had just declared that he would use it. If this was a day ago, he would never have imagined that he would use such a despicable ploy against another person. or the amount of shadow it would cast on his own heart. Behind him, countless gazes drilled trembling holes behind the eternal heaven god emperor's back. It was as if they were seeing him in a completely new light. Good, Kai Fanshin praised. It looks like the eternal heaven god emperor's determination to kill the devil person Yuan Qi is as firm as 1,000 mountains. It's true that the devil person Yuan Qi is a dangerous threat, and no means is too low if it means getting rid of him. If Yuan Qi doesn't show up in 9 hours then, well, I'm sure you couldn't bear to commit such atrocities yourself, so why don't this king alleviate you of that burden? Kai Fanshin asked with a chuckle. Have you asked for my permission? Suddenly, the cold, imposing voice of a woman cut across space before a flash of moonlight descended from above. It was the moon god emperor who had landed in between the god emperors, followed closely by Yue Wuji. Everyone focused their eyes on Xia Qingyu, and Kai Fanshin turned around to face her before narrowing his eyes. Your old ties to the devil person Yuan Qi aren't holding you back, are they? Moon god emperor? He purposely put emphasis on the line old ties to the devil person Yuan Qi. Holding me back? Xia Qingyu shot a half-smile at Kai Fanshin before continuing menacingly. If your dear daughter hadn't screwed up yesterday, this king would have killed Yuan Qi with her own hands. There would have been no need for today's commotion or future threats to speak of, and you dare talk to me about accountability? Kai Fanshin frowned upon hearing this. If Yuan Qi is as heartless as you are, he would have fled the god realm a long time ago. So answer me, Brahma Heaven God Emperor. An invisible pressure dropped down on Kai Fanshin. Can you kill your daughter as atonement for his escape? He. Kai Fanshin averted his gaze and laughed in response. Forgive this king for his slip of the tongue, Moon God Emperor. If the devil person truly shows up, this king shall leave it to you to slay him. This king has said yesterday that the devil person Yuan Qi must be slain by her own hands, so you never had the right to leave him to me to begin with. Xia Qingyu said coldly before switching her attention to the blue pole star. Her lips curled into an icy sneer as she said, Yuan Qi is just a level 1 divine king. There's no way he could escape the dragon monarch and the eternal heaven god emperor's combined power even if he had 1,000,000 lives. So why are the rest of you here? She was of course asking the other god emperors and eastern divine region realm kings. Are you here to slay the devil person, or are you here to steal a share of the pie that is Yuan Qi's planet? Her scornful comment struck true for almost everyone present. Then why are you here, Moon God Emperor? Kai Fanshin countered. It seems like you've all forgotten one thing. Xia Qingyu's voice grew more and more frigid. Blue Pole Star isn't just Yuan Qi's birthplace. It is this king's birthplace as well. So this king asks, you greedy people. She abruptly turned around and glared piercingly at the group of realm kings behind her. Have any of you asked for my opinion before you came here? The higher realm kings took a step almost in unison when her chilly gaze and presence hit them. No one dared to say a word for a time. In that case, why are you here, Moon God Emperor? This time, the person who spoke up was the dragon monarch. An invisible pressure instantly froze the space around this place. In fact, everyone caught a hint of displeasure in his tone. It was because Xia Qingyu was the one who brought Yuan Qi to the forbidden land of Samsara. Yuan Qi wouldn't even know who Xianxia was if it wasn't for her. Xia Qingyu didn't seem to notice the pressure behind the dragon monarch's words. She continued to stare at the azure planet ahead of her and said, There are 2 things this king must do today. 1, this king must slay Yuan Qi with her own hands, or she'll always be known as the wife of a devil person. Anyone who dares to snatch this right from me will face my wrath. The Moon God Emperor was without a doubt the youngest and least experienced God Emperor of all who were present, and she was a woman no less. Any one person here had hundreds, or even thousands of times of experience and seniority over her, and she barely had any real relationship with them at all. However, she didn't seem to realize this herself. Despite facing the strongest God Emperor of the 3 divine regions, her posture and appearance remained as imposing as ever. Not a shred of humility or restraint could be sensed in her at all. Ha 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 ha. The Southern Sea God Emperor laughed loudly as he stared at Xia Qingyu from the side with dark eyes. The Moon God Emperor sure is obsessed with this. There is no one who would dare criticize you even if you failed to slay him with your own hands, you know. If someone is bold enough to do that, you don't even need to defend yourself. This king would teach them a lesson first. Xia Qingyu failed to kill Yuan Qi yesterday due to Kai Yinger's interference, but everyone had witnessed her ruthlessness yesterday. She had seriously tried to wipe every atom of Yuan Qi out of existence. Anyone who captures Yuan Qi will get to dispose him however they like, the dragon monarch said indifferently. If you wish to slay him yourself, then you must be able to capture him first. Very well. Xia Qingyu raised her chin a bit before continuing. This king urgently needs to quell her impatience, but she isn't an unreasonable person. As the dragon monarch says, anyone who captures Yuan Qi will get to decide what to do with him. No one is allowed to interfere after that. Is everyone okay with that? I have nothing to say on this matter. The eternal heaven god emperor closed his eyes and said, however, he must be killed on the spot. He mustn't be taken alive. Just yesterday, he was the one who had stopped those who would kill Yuan Qi, suggesting to destroy his profound energy instead as an alternative. However, his stance had completely turned around. Not only was his determination to kill Yuan Qi at its peak, it was to the point where he was willing to stoop to any level. Evil will bring the carnage of a devil god. Every single word was like a nightmare that pierced his heart and soul. But of course, Xia Qingyu declared coldly, what is that second thing you must do? Ni Yuan asked curiously. Xia Qingyu turned around completely and swept an icy glance across everyone's faces. Then she said slowly, I'm stopping everyone from setting foot on my birthplace. Everyone's expression changed when they heard this. HMPH, this is the place where I was born, and this king will not allow you all to trample all over it, Xia Qingyu said coldly. Yuan Qi deserves to die, but that doesn't mean I'll allow my honor to be dragged through the mud. Everyone present could sense the fury and determination in Xia Qingyu's tone. The eternal heaven god emperor let out a sigh and said, Don't worry, moon god emperor. We're only here for Yuan Qi and nothing else. We will not drag anyone else into this. This king trusts that you mean what you say, eternal heaven god emperor. But can you promise the same for everyone else around you? Xia Qingyu said. The eternal heaven god emperor couldn't say anything against that. Moreover, Yuan Qi's family will be harmed whether or not he appears today. I'm sure every one of you is aware of this, Xia Qingyu said coldly. This king must slay Yuan Qi with her own hands, but she is old friends with some of his wives, and one of them is even her former senior, a person whom this king owes a great favor to. This king will not bear witness to the ugliness you'll bring to her former acquaintances. Moreover, Xia Qingyu pushed on before the god emperors could interrupt her. Killing Yuan Qi isn't even your primary objective today. Most of you are here to pry the secrets of Yuan Qi's birthplace, and conflict will happen if a discovery is made. No one cares for this lowly planet, but grudges will be harbored, and rivers of blood will run between the realms. That is ugly. As a god emperor of the Eastern Divine Region, there is no way this king will allow such ugliness to happen to her birthplace. He. A thin smile appeared on Ni Yuan's face. That is a laughable story, moon god emperor. This planet is already known to the entire Eastern Divine Region, and it's only a matter of time before news of its whereabouts reaches the 3 divine regions. Suppose you manage to stop everyone from prying its secrets today, how long do you think you can keep this up? I doubt you can even stop us today. Is that so? Xia Qingyu smiled at him, but there was no emotion behind it whatsoever. What if I destroy it then? That would solve my problems once and for all, wouldn't you agree? Her words surprised everyone present. The Southern Sea God Emperor was the first to laugh loudly. How interesting. The Moon God Emperor is truly an interesting person, ha ha ha. Xiang. The purple pylon divine sword came out of its sheath, its purple glare silencing the Southern Sea God Emperor's laugh immediately. Every God Emperor turned to look at her in shock. This is my birthplace, and no one is allowed to trample over it. To allow this is to allow you greedy lot to trample over my face. The color of the power surrounding the purple pylon divine sword grew deeper and deeper, and a terrible pressure radiated toward the surroundings at an extraordinary rate. Ni Yuan's expression turned dark. As the pressure from the blade continued to grow exponentially, he started to realize that Xia Qingyu was actually serious about destroying her birthplace. He said, "Have you gone insane, Moon God Emperor? This is your birthplace. Your clansmen, family, and friends are all on that planet." But Xia Qingyu didn't look moved in the slightest. She said in a leisurely tone, "You know, Yuan Qi's downfall was a good wake-up call for me. If someone can use his birthplace and his family to force him into submission today, then someone can use the same tactic against me tomorrow. This king's biological father, younger brother, former master, and seniors are all on this planet. If someone were to use them against me one day, should I submit to my exploiters or not? If this one refuses to submit, then the whole world will laugh at my heartlessness and indifference. But if I must submit, A half-smile appeared on Xia Qingyu's face. This king is the god emperor of the moon god realm, so why would I allow a weakness like this to exist? Xing. The purple pylon divine sword's power had grown several times stronger while she was speaking, and everyone's faces were dyed purple by its glare. The god emperors were merely surprised by her power, but the Eastern realm kings behind them couldn't even breathe properly. Such terrifying power was of course enough to utterly annihilate the azure-colored planet before them, but Xia Qingyu apparently thought that it still wasn't enough. A terrifying amount of power was gathering and swelling at a rapid rate. Moon God Emperor, you? The Eternal Heaven God Emperor's expression changed drastically as he yelled. You can't do this. You said it yourself that your father and your younger brother are all on that planet. Yuan Qi's a devil person, but the denizens of Blue Pole Star are all innocent. Xia Qingyu said. The Brahma Heaven God Emperor already mentioned it earlier. It's only a matter of time before the three divine regions learn about this. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that countless God realm profound practitioners will be setting foot on this lowly planet and fighting over it starting today. The only thing that awaits this lowly planet is endless trampling and calamity, so it may as well die now than suffer a fate worse than death. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor frowned deeper as he tried to say something, but Xia Qingyu looked at him first and said indifferently, You're the one who exposed this planet's location and drove it to a dead end, Eternal Heaven God Emperor. So why are you pitying its fate? Whatever the Eternal Heaven God Emperor was going to say instantly became stuck in his throat. He couldn't say anything for a very long time. Are you sure you must do this, Moon God Emperor? The Dragon Monarch asked with a slight frown. Xia Qingyu might be the Moon God Emperor, but she was only 30 years old. A young woman like her shouldn't be able to steal her heart like this. If Yuan Qi doesn't show up today, then this planet will be very useful. You should at least wait until he makes his appearance. That, you have nothing to worry about, Dragon Monarch, Xia Qingyu said. This king was married to Yuan Qi before. I know him better than anyone here, and I guarantee that he'll show up today, if not a lot sooner than all of you might think. Moon God Emperor. Kainai Fanshan appeared in front of Xia Qingyu in a flash before declaring, I'm personally inclined to think that you're bluffing, but know that this king disagrees if you truly intend to destroy your planet. Oh, really? Xia Qingyu narrowed her eyes slightly. Strength-wise, this king dare not claim that she's the equal of any god emperor present. But if this king sets her mind to destroying the Blue Pole Star, do you really think anyone here can stop me? You! Kainai Fanshan's expression grew even darker. She was right. Blue Pole Star was a massive target, and there was no one who could stop its destruction if a god emperor truly set their mind to destroying it. Everyone was growing more and more certain that Xia Qingyu was serious. The purple pylon divine sword's power was still growing. It had reached the point where even the god emperors were feeling a little threatened. Suddenly, every god emperor raised their eyebrows at once. An aura was approaching them very quickly, and it was none other than the vanishing moon celestial palace, Yuan Qi. Yuan Qi's arrival changed the atmosphere immediately as everyone looked in the same direction. It was as Xia Qingyu had said. Not only did Yuan Qi show up, it was far sooner than almost everyone had expected. There was a flurry of auras as the god emperors moved into position immediately. Even Kainai Fanshan had set aside Xia Qingyu for the moment and moved further away. Unlike the Eternal Heaven God Emperor, he didn't care if Yuan Qi lived or died. What he desired was the Sky Poison Pearl and the Heretic God Divine Power. Xia Qingyu's reaction was unusually subdued compared to the people around her. She looked towards distance and felt the vanishing moon celestial palace's trajectory. She muttered to herself, This is fine too. Large and terrible profound ships appeared on the horizon, prompting Yuan Qi to look up from his seat inside the vanishing moon celestial palace. These supreme rulers and god emperors almost never showed their faces in public, but today they were all piling themselves on top of this poor star system for him. He didn't look at anyone. His only target was the Blue Pole Star. The sight of his planet lit a flame of hope inside his shadowed heart. The fact that the profound ships and the people were here meant that they hadn't set foot on Blue Pole Star just yet. If he pushed the vanishing moon celestial palace to its limits, then a breakthrough wasn't completely impossible. He would enter the Blue Pole Star before them, grab Wuxin and the others into the vanishing moon celestial palace, and escape using the void illusory stone. It was the only way, the only hope and chance he had. He sucked in a deep breath, and his eyes turned completely cool. It was at this moment a dozen or so profound energies flew toward him from multiple directions. Although they were fired from very far away, every one contained immense power. If it wasn't for the Vanishing Moon's celestial palace, a single hit would have critically wounded him. The Vanishing Moon celestial palace slowed drastically under the bombardment. "Very good," Yuan-Chi said through gritted teeth. Boom! A flash of dazzling silver exploded from the top of the Vanishing Moon celestial palace, and it was able to break free of all the profound energies suppressing it. Then it charged toward the blue pole star even faster than before. It was obvious that it had broken through its limit. The eyes of Golden Moon God Yue Wuji flashed golden. Oh, surprised, a dangerous smile appeared on the Southern Sea God Emperor's face. As expected of the Vanishing Moon celestial palace, tusk. It looks like he still plans to resist. Xianxia Fanshan chuckled once. How naive. The God Emperors took off and flew straight toward the Vanishing Moon celestial palace. However, Xia Qingyu suddenly raised her free hand and pointed a finger at the incoming vessel, her palm glowing slightly with moonlight. Inside the Vanishing Moon celestial palace, Yuan-Chi's mind suddenly turned blank without warning. He felt as if something had shattered in his soul. It was followed by the severance of his connection to the Vanishing Moon celestial palace. "Wuji," Xia Qingyu whispered. The second Xia Qingyu spoke, Yue Wuji immediately took off in a burst of golden light. But instead of flying towards the Vanishing Moon celestial palace, he actually circled around and approached the vessel from the back. Suddenly, the Vanishing Moon celestial palace slowed drastically and made an incredible U-turn. Then, it flew at full speed straight toward Yue Wuji. Every God Emperor flying toward the Vanishing Moon celestial palace looked shocked. Yue Wuji's greatest strength was his speed, and he was at least as fast as the former Moon God Emperor, Yue Wuya. By the time everyone else finally reacted, the Vanishing Moon celestial palace was already right in front of him. Xia Qingyu made another hand gesture, and Yuan-Chi was ejected straight out of the vessel and controlled firmly by Yue Wuji. No one had seen this coming. Yuan-Chi the least of all of them. He was the master of the Vanishing Moon celestial palace, but he had been robbed of his right in just an instant. According to the agreement, anyone who captured Yuan-Chi has the right to dispose of him however they like, Xia Qingyu said indifferently. If there's anyone who would like to stop me, please speak up now so this king may turn her wrath on them. We are God Emperors, and we don't go back on our words. As promised, the Moon God Emperor will be the one to dispose him, HMPH. At least this'll be a most fitting execution, the Dragon Monarch said expressionlessly. Hee, that's an amazing trick, Moon God Emperor. Xianxia Fanshan was smiling, but on the inside he was really fuming with rage. He finally understood why Xia Qingyu had agreed to the Dragon Monarch's conditions so easily. In fact, now that he thought about it, she was planning for this to happen from the start. The Vanishing Moon Celestial Palace was the Moon God Realm's best profound ship, and everyone knew that Xia Qingyu had gifted it to Yuan-Chi. However, no one had expected her to seize back control by force. That being said, no one was too surprised after they had time to process things in their heads. The Vanishing Moon Celestial Palace was powered by the Moon God Divine Power, and as the Moon God Emperor Xia Qingyu controlled the very origin of all Moon God Divine Power. She definitely had the power to interrupt the Vanishing Moon Celestial Palace by force. It looks like the Moon God Emperor is very obsessed with slaying Yuan-Chi with her own hands, the Southern Sea God Emperor said with a smile. Yuan-Chi heard everything as Yue Wuji carried him closer to the group. He looked up and stared at the glowing Xia Qingyu in utter confusion. Qingyu, you... Restrain his limbs, Xia Qingyu said indifferently. He has a void illusion stone on him. Don't allow him even a single opportunity. Yue Wuji answered her command and turned up his power a couple of notches. As a result, Yuan-Chi couldn't move a muscle besides his head. Yuan-Chi's eyes paled in utter disbelief. He could feel that it was Xia Qingyu who had seized the Vanishing Moon Celestial Palace from him and destroyed his only hope. Even if he could convince himself that Xia Qingyu was trying to save him by controlling him personally. Why had she told everyone that he had a void illusion stone? It was completely unnecessary. Yuan-Chi, Xia Qingyu gazed eastward and stared at the azure planet at the distance. This king will grant you a gift before you die. Watch closely and don't miss even a single moment. It'd be a shame to miss something like this. He had always loved Xia Qingyu's voice, even when she purposely kept it free from emotion. But right now her words only sent a chill down his marrow and a terrible sense of unease throughout his body. King Yu, what are you trying to do? Xia Qingyu swung her sword before he could finish. The blade was only 7 feet long, but the purple light it fired was hundreds of meters long. It took only an instant for it to grow to 10,000 meters, 5,000 kilometers, 500,000 kilometers, encompassing everything. Everyone was speechless, and Yuan Qi's pupils shrank like a needle. The purple light annihilated all space within its path before hitting the azure planet dead on. The blue pole star was cut in half before it crumbled into countless azure blue pieces. In the end, even the star-like pieces were devoured by the purple explosion. The land, the sea, the mountains, the people, everything was reduced to absolutely nothing. The scattered fragments turned into an endless amount of stardust, forming a long, starry river. But after that, the purple light eroded it into even tinier dust clouds, and this destruction continued until all of it had been reduced to nothingness. RMBBRRBZZZ? As the stardust was being ground into nothing, that vast rumbling explosion finally came, accompanied by an incomparably terrifying spatial storm. Wild air currents caused trembling low moans to echo throughout the area, and all the gathered higher realm kings were sent flying into the distance. Xia Qingyu stood unmoving within that spatial storm. Only her long hair and the sleeves of her robes were flying wildly. She was clad in that star-destroying purple light, conjuring up an image of such unreal celestial beauty that it would even drive heavenly goddesses into despair. However, even though it was such an image of peerlessly surreal beauty, the sight of her sent a chill through everyone's soul. The moon god emperor, she had destroyed the blue pole star. She had actually destroyed the planet where she had been born with her own 2 hands. It was true that most divine, profound practitioners were indifferent to love and affection. Furthermore, the amount of indifference a divine, profound practitioner had toward these sort of feelings usually corresponded with their lifespan and their status, their emotions dulling over time. However, being indifferent towards these sort of things definitely did not mean that one became heartless. After all, a person's blood and their birthplace were things which were ultimately irreplaceable. No matter how lowly and inferior the blue pole star was, it was still her birthplace, and her own father and younger brother had still lived there as well. It was where her roots were, where she had spent her entire life before she had entered the god realm, yet she had so resolutely destroyed it with a single stroke of her sword. At this moment, the figure of the moon god emperor that was wreathed in purple light was indelibly etched into the hearts and souls of everyone present. On this day, their perspective of the new moon god emperor completely changed. No, rather, this was truly the new emperor of the moon god realm. To think that she was actually truly this heartless. The Western region's Qilin emperor gasped in a low voice. The most terrifying thing in the world will always be women, the blue dragon emperor said as her chest heaved violently. At this moment, her impression of the moon god emperor was undergoing a drastic change. A god emperor who was so cruel and ruthless that she could even get rid of her own relatives and birthplace in such a callous and decisive manner from now on. Who would dare to casually offend her? Who would dare to casually offend the moon god realm? Yuan Qi was completely fixed in place. He did not move a single inch. His mouth gaped open, but he could not make any sound come out of it. Even the annihilated blue stardust and the destroying purple moonlight could not stir up even a shred of color in his eyes. Because his world had already gone completely white. There was no destruction that was more dazzling than this, no despair that was more complete than this. My father, my mother, my grandfathers, Kang Yue, Lingxi, Yuechen, Kei, Zuer, Linger, Ziner, Wuxin, Yuanba, the Yun family, frozen cloud immortal palace. Everyone, every single thing, all of his memories. Everything had been forever transformed into the most beautiful and illusory cloud of dust before his lifeless eyes. The last bit of blue stardust had been consumed by purple light, and in the end even the purple light was beginning to fade. In the midst of that raging spatial storm, all of the planets in the star region had deviated from their original orbits. In the most serious cases, they had deviated by nearly half a star region and tottered on the edge of destruction. Under the power of a god emperor, all that existed in the lower realms, even stars, were simply frail and weak. Xia Qingyu slowly lowered her arm. That simple movement, a movement that could not be any more ordinary, caused everyone's eyeballs to shake. But the purple pylon divine sword had not been sheathed, and it was still glowing with an ethereal purple light. "Is it beautiful?" she softly asked as she looked at Yuan Qi. Her voice was clearly as soft and gentle as a dream, and it was clearly accompanied by those three ambiguous words, but to the current Yuan-Chi, it was undoubtedly the cruelest, soul-penetrating voice in the universe. A voice that caused a whole host of realm kings to shudder in fear as their very souls trembled. Yuan-Chi did not react at all. He simply stared at the void where that azure star had once been. Even that field of stardust had been completely dispersed. A frightfully pale sheen covered his body, face, and eyes. His entire body looked like it had been drained of blood, and it seemed as if his entire soul had been wrenched out of him. Only a cold and despairing shell had been left behind. Sigh, the eternal heaven god emperor turned around and shut his eyes as he gave a heavy sigh. Moon god emperor, you did not have to go so far. Xianxia Fanshan's face darkened, and it took a good amount of time before his face started to relax again as he said in a calm voice, "No wonder Yinger fell into your hands. Moon God Emperor, you've left this king with no choice but to look at you in a different light." Even someone as venomous and sinister as Xianxia Yinger had deeply loved her mother and was willing to become a slave to save her father. But the Moon God Emperor, when a woman grew cruel, it was truly enough to make every man shake in his boots. Xia Qingyu paid them no mind, her cool and indifferent gaze never moving away from Yuan-Chi. She had not shown any sentimentalism or emotional distress when the blue pole star was destroyed. It was as if she had merely wiped away an insignificant speck of dust. Yuan-Chi finally stirred. His head started to turn, and its movement was incredibly rigid and slow. It was as if he was a shoddy wooden puppet being controlled by strings. As he looked at Xia Qingyu, looked at that face and body which were so familiar to him, he found that she had suddenly become alien and distant to him. He finally spoke, but that word was spoken with such incredible difficulty and weakness that it was barely audible. Why? Xia Qingyu's eyes were like pools of placid water. Just like yesterday, when it seemed like you absolutely did not believe that I would try to kill you too. You've always been so childish and absurd. Yuan-Chi. Nobody spoke as they quietly stared at these two people who used to be husband and wife. The situation had already developed far beyond any of their expectations. She had personally captured Yuan-Chi, personally destroyed the world they had been born on. The scene that was playing out in front of them was incomparably cold and cruel, and even the gathered god emperors and divine masters were not willing to approach them. The cold, oppressive might that radiated from the moon god emperor was clearly telling all of them that no one had the right or the room to interfere in this matter. That's right. Yesterday, Yuan-Chi definitely would not have believed that Xia Qingyu would try to kill him. In fact, up to the point where the purple light on her sword had gathered and solidified and came slicing down at him, he still clung to his belief. Even though he had spent far more time apart from Xia Qingyu than he had together with her, her figure had been engraved far too deeply in his life. When they were 16, at the point in his life when he had been at his lowest and most helpless, it was Xia Qingyu who protected his last shred of dignity while also ensuring the safety of him, Xiao Lai, and Xiao Lingxi. When they had met for the first time after their marriage, when he had ended up in the belly of a giant beast, inside Heavenly Sword Villa's Heaven Basin's secret realm. She had covered his body with all of her power in order to save his life, all while consigning herself to death instead. It was also from that point forward that Xia Qingyu's place in his heart and his life had undergone a complete change. He had also sensed that his own figure had been carved into Xia Qingyu's eyes and heart. As a result of destroying the Burning Heaven clan, he was pursued by Sword Saint Ling Tianyi. In that desperate situation, it was once again Xia Qingyu who had fought with him shoulder to shoulder, and they had defeated Ling Tianyi together. After that, there was no news of Xia Qingyu, and a full 8 years passed before she appeared before his eyes once more, and they were already in another world altogether. It was also on that day that he had been stricken by Xianxia Yinger's Brahma soul death-wishing mark, and once again, it was Xia Qingyu who had brought him to the dragon god realm. More than a decade had passed since they had gotten married, but when one added up the time they had actually spent with each other, it was incomparably short. Even though they had spent so much time apart from each other, even if they were separated by an entire plane, even if the location changed from the blue pole star to the moon god realm, they always ended up meeting each other. Furthermore, almost every time Xia Qingyu appeared in his life, she would always save him from a desperate situation. Meanwhile, what he had done for Xia Qingyu was incredibly insignificant in comparison. Furthermore, upon reflecting upon Xia Qingyu's life up to this point, she always seemed to be living for others. Even when she became the Moon God Emperor, half of it had been to repay her foster father, and the other half had been because of him. Xianxia had said this, Mu Xunian had also said this, and in reality, he had actually known it all along. Thus, he had never put up any defenses in front of Xia Qingyu, and he would never keep any secrets from her. No matter how much coldness and indifference she showed toward him, in his eyes, it was nothing more than her intentionally pretending to be tsundere. But why? Everything that had happened. Had it really just been him being ridiculous and delusional? He stared at Xia Qingyu as he tried to once again see her face clearly, to see her soul clearly. Speaking of which, you really should thank this king, Xia Qingyu said indifferently, so apathetic that even the reflection in her eyes was indifferent. If this king had not destroyed the blue pole star, then your family and friends, and all of the living creatures on this planet, their fates would have been extremely miserable from today onwards. But this king allowed them to be directly released from this miserable fate, and I've also spared you the agony of watching them fall into the hands of others. Even more than that, I also made sure that you won't be lonely on your journey to the next life. Since that's the case, don't you think you should thank me? She was clearly standing so close to him, but her figure was growing more and more unfamiliar, more and more blurry. It was actually her. She was the one who had personally destroyed the blue pole star, killed all of his family and loved ones, killed his own daughter, destroyed everything. He muttered soullessly, even if you wanted to eliminate everything that had to do with me, your master, your father, and Yuanba. Heh. Before Yuanqi even finished speaking, her extremely soft and disdainful laugh rang in his ears. Yuanqi, this king told you something a very long time ago, but it seems like you never took my words seriously. This king isn't only Xia Qingyu. Even more than that, I am the Moon God Emperor. Yuanqi, do you even know what being a God Emperor entails? Perhaps you think that you know, but in reality, you've never truly understood. To a God Emperor, what does a mere home planet count for? Family and loved ones. What are those? If this king was as childish and stupid as you are, and I was not even willing to discard a few relatives in the lower realms who were as low as ants, then I wouldn't have the face to be the emperor of the moon gods. She slowly raised the purple pylon divine sword and pointed it at Yuanqi's forehead. The purple light radiated by the sword was slowly condensing around it as she said, If you had thrown them all away and fled toward the northern divine region with all your might, then this king might have raised my estimation of you. It's a pity that your foolishness is truly incurable. However, to this king, things couldn't be any better. It is only by personally executing you that I will truly be able to wash away the stain of having once been a devil's wife. Xia Qingyu's expression still remained as cold as a wintry pool, and it had not changed at all from beginning to end. A very faint wisp of killing intent started to slowly spread through the air at this moment, and even though it was faint, it was so cold that it pierced the soul. After you die, you should take some time to think about what you should do in your next life. The sword was raised high in the air, the purple light radiating from it dazzling. Those exact same words, the exact same purple pylon divine sword. Given Xia Qingyu's profound strength, she only needed to flick a finger if she wanted to destroy Yuanqi. However, during her 2 attempts on Yuanqi's life, she had used the purple pylon divine sword, and before the sword fell, it would always gather a rather dense amount of purple pylon divine light. Perhaps it was so that she could completely obliterate him in a single instant. Heh. Yuanqi started laughing, and it was an incomparably dry and hoarse laugh, an incomparably wan smile. A soundless chill sank into the hearts of every single person present, making them feel like the entire star system around them had become mournful and desolate. Wash away the stain of having once been a devil's wife. Xia Qingyu, it is you who has stained the lineage of my Yun family, Xia Qingyu. A trickle of dark red blood slowly trailed down the corner of Yuanqi's mouth. He looked at Xia Qingyu and pronounced each and every word with a deliberate slowness. The Yun clan's Yuanqi has a wife from the Xia clan, Qingyu. She is unfilial to her parents-in-law. She is enemies with her clansmen. She murdered her own father and brother. She is heartless and devoid of righteousness. She is as venomous as a scorpion and a snake. Even if I were to use 10,000 words, it would still be hard to list down all of her crimes. I've decided to divorce you, and we will sever every relation we have with each other from now on. From today onward, we owe each other nothing but hatred, a hatred that will carry on for all eternity. Each word was filled with blood. Each word was overflowing with hatred. All of those warm feelings, all of the previous tenderness, even the occasional glance they had exchanged. Right now, all of it seemed like such a sorrowful farce. PFFFFFT. A fierce jet of blood spurted out from his mouth as Yuan Qi bit down on his tongue. Xia Qingyu did not dodge, and a bright red word, divorce, was sprayed onto her clothes. It was incomparably glaring. The blood-red word slowly spread out on her white dress. It looked terribly grim and mournful. Xia Qingyu moved her head down slightly and glanced at the bloody word in silence. When she looked away, there still wasn't a bit of emotion in her eyes. There might never be any reciprocative, unconscious, or uncertain warmth in her eyes ever again. The word and the bloody hatred within it pierced through everyone's heart and soul like a poisoned blade. This man had the unparalleled halo of the Messiah in the God realm, but he had chosen to return to the lower realms with the evil infant instead. He came to the blue pole star despite knowing that there was a near 100% chance he would die. It showed just how important his family was to him, far more important than even his own life. But Xia Qingyu had annihilated everything right in front of him. They weren't Yuan Qi, but even they could feel the terrible cruelty and suffocation of the act. It was impossible to gauge just how much Yuan Qi hated Xia Qingyu right now, even though no amount of hatred would be able to reverse time. The spatial storm slowly subsided. This time, what hit them wasn't the dust of a crumbling planet, but the chaotic aura of blood and despair. They were the blood of countless murdered lives, and the sorrowful souls that hadn't yet dissipated completely. Everyone had fallen silent for a very long amount of time, and even the god emperors were feeling different degrees of discomfort. The destruction of an entire planet was a debt of blood that was too big for description. The death toll alone was counted in the trillions. Very good. She stared expressionlessly at Yuan Qi. With this, the bond is fully severed. Have you forgotten, Yuan Qi? We were already going to bring up our torn marriage contract again, aren't you? I'm telling you it's useless. Our marriage record is still preserved nicely at Floating Cloud City, and our wedding witnesses are alive and well. According to the laws of Floating Cloud City, you and I are husband and wife unless I've divorced you, or if you bring proof of my failure to fulfill my husbandly responsibilities to the court and sit through a convoluted marriage cancellation process. Otherwise, we'll always be husband and wife. You think tearing up a marriage contract counts as an official cancellation of marriage? HMPH. The new god emperor of the moon god realm is so childish. Just 2 months ago, Yuan Qi had arched his eyebrows, curled his lips, and reminded her about the rules of Floating Cloud City in an admonishing tone. He had told her that the city's rules should be followed because it was there that they were married, and that the marriage contract didn't matter. She would always be his wife unless he initiated the divorce. She hadn't forgotten about it. He hadn't forgotten about it either. Yuan Qi closed his eyes and stopped talking after that. The world was icy, dark, and dead. He had saved the world. Jasmine had also saved the world. But the same people had turned on them, driving Jasmine out of the primal chaos in the name of punishing the evil infant, and cornering him into a dead end in the name of punishing a devil person. The one who triggered everything was the god emperor he respected and trusted the most, the eternal heaven god emperor. The one who cruelly destroyed everything he had was the one person he was the least guarded against. The woman he had always been most appreciative and grateful for. Qingyu. Heh. Answer me, Yuan Qi. Do you think that this world is worth my sacrifice? Do you think that this world is worth my sacrifice? Is this world worth my sacrifice? Jia Yuan's words kept reverberating chaotically inside his head, and he could no longer recall his own answer. Wuji, please retreat for the moment. Yes. Yue Wuji backed far, far away, leaving Yuan Qi and Xia Qingyu alone. The sword surrounded by purple energy slowly descended towards Yuan Qi. A single touch could wipe him out in an instant. However, not even its rich purple glow could wash away the deathly grayness of Yuan Qi's complexion. Neither hatred nor anger could be felt from him. It was almost like he was a dead person. Everyone had something they valued the most. It could be power, strength, love, wealth, life, and so on. The man beneath the purple pylon divine sword hadn't just lost the most precious thing in his life. He had lost everything he had ever valued. It was all too ironic and cruel. It was enough to destroy even the most tenacious will. Perhaps death was the best release for Yuan Qi right now. Living would be like living in eternal darkness. This king supposes that there's no harm in telling you one thing before you die. Xia Qingyu said slowly. This king told you yesterday that there was something she needed to speak to you about when the time was right, but it would appear that such a time will never come. In that case, she may as well tell you about it now. She leaned forward slightly and lowered her voice until Yuan Qi was the only one who could hear her. Xianxia is dead. Yuan Qi's grayish pupils trembled slightly. Some time ago, this king went to the dragon god realm and discovered that the forbidden land of Samsara was completely destroyed. All the plants are dead, no one is around, and its spirit energy is completely spent, Xia Qingyu said at a volume only Yuan Qi could hear. Later on, this king went to the center of the forbidden land of Samsara and found a pool of blood in the middle. Although a long time had passed, the blood showed no signs of drying at all. It's because it had pure light aura in it. Can you guess whose blood it was? Yuan Qi. You knew a long time ago that something must have happened to her, but you never really worried because you thought that there was no one in the world who could hurt her. As for the one who could, you thought that they were the last person in the world who would hurt her. In reality, though, you had completely underestimated how low a person can stoop. You are far more experienced than your peers, and you thought you had figured out humanity after all the years you spent in the lower realms. But that isn't true, is it? Did you forget that you have only lived for decades at most, while these people have lived for millennia, if not tens of millennia? Do you really think you've seen all their faces? Do you really think you figured out the God realm's laws of survival? Yuan Qi didn't react to her words at all. Xia Qingyu finally stopped talking and projected an aura of disdain. Will you turn into a crying wraith or a vengeful devil god in the hell of afterlife? This king very much looks forward to that day. Now, die. The purple pylon divine sword finally dropped toward Yuan Qi. Last time, the enthralled Kaianai Yinger had interfered with her execution attempt. This time, though, absolutely no one could stop her any longer. With this swing, Yuan Qi would vanish completely from this world, and with it the world's memory of him. But, once again, something had happened during the last possible moment. A cold, blue glint accompanied by a terrible killing intent appeared out of nowhere and moved straight for Xia Qingyu's throat. This murderous chill had been suppressed for far too long. All the space thousands of kilometers away from it was instantly frozen. All 13 god emperors of the 3 divine regions were present, but no one had seen this coming. Shocked, Xia Qingyu instantly backed off from the attacker and flung Yuan Qi away to the back. Everyone watching from the sidelines was shocked by this unexpected turn of events. The icy glint had come from a flawless, white sword covered in a bluish glow, and it was wielded by a blue-haired woman who looked like an ice fairy from a dream. Everyone's eyes focused on her at the same time. They had never seen such a cold pair of eyes, cold enough to freeze the entire world into a frozen hell. Snow Song, Realm King? The Eternal Heaven God Emperor blurted. Literally everyone was wearing an expression of shock on their faces. Even the God Emperors were no exception. That attack from space had been less than 60 meters away from Xia Qingyu, and yet not one of them had noticed it until it was already too late. They might not be at their most attentive because Yuan Qi was completely harmless to them. But there were 13 God Emperors, dozens of Brahma Kings and Guardians, and hundreds of higher realm kings present in the area. And not one of them had noticed the assassin hiding just 60 meters away from Xia Qingyu. It was simply unbelievable. Moreover, that attack had been aimed at the throat. Had Xia Qingyu been anyone else, had it been a weaker divine master, the attack would have critically wounded the target or even killed them outright. Xia Qingyu looked at the icy blue figure after she had dodged out of harm's way, but she could no longer see any trust or peace in those icy eyes. There was only coldness and hatred. The attacker was none other than Mu Xunian herself. Yuan Qi was thrown far into the distance. His colorless pupils regained their focus almost immediately when the familiar figure became reflected in his pupils. In that moment, he felt like he had fallen deeper into the dreamscape as he cried out in a daze, "Massater!" Sploosh. Hair dancing, Mu Xunian pointed the Snow Princess sword toward the front and summoned the image of an ice phoenix. It looked solid enough to be real, but it exploded immediately and froze everything within several million kilometers into an icy hell. The stunned crowd was shocked yet again by the display of power. Everyone knew that the Blue Dragon Emperor of the Western Divine Region was the strongest water profound practitioner, so her shock was the greatest out of everyone else present. She blurted without thinking, "Since when did the God realm have someone like her?" It was clearly at the level of God Emperors, the power of ice no less. The Eastern Divine Region's Snow Song Realm King, I can't believe that the rumors are actually true. Beside her, the Killin Emperor was just as surprised. Meanwhile, the Eternal Heaven God Emperor did a double take after crying out the title, Snow Song Realm King. Dashing madly towards Mu Xunian, he sealed the space where Mu Xunian and Yuan Qi were while shouting, "Yuan Qi has a void illusory stone." His shout instantly brought all the God Emperors back to the present. 5 God Emperor auras erupted in unison and shattered the space of this area immediately. At the front, the Eternal Heaven God Emperor charged toward Yuan-Chi instead of bothering with Mu Xunian. The distance between him and Yuan-Chi was instantly shortened. Yuan-Chi might possess the body of the Dragon God, but even he would be crushed if the Eternal Heaven God Emperor managed to catch him with his power. On the other side, the Brahma Heaven God Emperor moved almost immediately after the Eternal Heaven God Emperor. However, he was charging toward Mu Xunian. Who in the world could bear the might of 2 God Emperors at once? Xia Qingyu stayed where she was without moving a muscle. This made it twice that she was interrupted at the last moment before she could kill Yuan-Chi. Qianai Yinger had interrupted her the first time, and Mu Xunian the second. Both times something completely unexpected had foiled her execution attempts without being detected by the God Emperors. Is this fate? She looked at her sword covered in purple aura and let out a sigh. Yuan-Chi was flung at least dozens of kilometers away with cold energy, but this gap was almost non-existent to a God Emperor. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor was able to close the distance between them immediately. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor extended his right hand and fired a giant palm attack at Yuan-Chi. The palm mark didn't need to touch Yuan-Chi at all. He would be killed the second the pressure of the palm mark reached him. On the other side, Qianai Fanchen flashed golden as he locked down Mu Xunian with his divine pressure. Mu Xunian moved rapidly across space and constructed a giant ice barrier with her left hand, just as the Eternal Heaven God Emperor attacked. She raised her right arm at the same time, but it was pointed behind Yuan-Chi instead of the Brahma Heaven God Emperor. A flash of blue connected her and Yuan-Chi, and a shell of ice of the deepest blue appeared hastily across Yuan-Chi's skin. Bang the Eternal Heaven God Emperor's palm mark and the Brahma Heaven God Emperor's golden profound light slammed against the icy barrier at the same time. There was a giant explosion that nearly shattered everyone's eardrums, and the space in front and behind the barrier crumpled rapidly after both attacks. However, Yuan-Chi only felt a slight tremor inside the ice, and nothing else. It was because Mu Xunian had spent 60% of her energy protecting him, and only 40% to defend herself from the Eternal Heaven God Emperor and Brahma Heaven God Emperor. The barrier shuddered, and the painful cry of an ice phoenix cut through space. A trail of blood flowed down Mu Xunian's lips, but the ice barrier held strong. Somehow it had withstood the might of 2 God Emperors. Everyone was stunned, speechless. Ice came second to Earth in terms of defense, so it was natural the Ice Phoenix divine power had incredible defensive capabilities. However, Mu Xunian was defending herself against 2 of the strongest God Emperors of the Eastern Divine Region and protecting Yuan-Chi from harm. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor and the Brahma Heaven God Emperor's expressions changed slightly. They backed off temporarily to charge up their strength before attacking the Ice Phoenix barrier again. Boom, this time, the explosion was loud enough to shake several distant stars. A jet of blood burst out of Mu Xunian's lips, and the barrier shook violently. But it didn't fall apart, and Mu Xunian didn't move from her spot. This time, the shock on everyone's faces became 10 times more exaggerated. This is... The higher realm kings of the Eastern Divine Region couldn't believe their own eyes. 2 months ago, the Eternal Heaven God Emperor had seen how Mu Xunian had defeated Luo Guxi and cut off one of her arms with his own eyes. However, Luo Guxi obviously wasn't going to spread the news of her defeat, and most king realms and star realms found it difficult to believe that it was true regardless of the level of information they received. It was only now that they recalled that rumor in their dismay. They started to realize that that rumor wasn't a fake after all. On the contrary, it had severely understated Mu Xunian's true strength. She was just a middle realm king. The ice that Mu Xunian had spent a large portion of her strength to construct had the unfortunate effect of restricting Yuan-Chi's movements completely despite protecting him from harm. It also cleared his head like never before. Inside the ice, he wasn't able to open his mouth or make any noises. The only part of him that could move was his pupils, and they were widened so much that they threatened to tear themselves apart. The Ice Phoenix aura that kept him still also gave him easy access to her heart and soul. Clenching his teeth tightly, he shouted with his mind, "Master, run, run! Why is she here? I thought we were. Boom. The ice barrier shuddered again as cracks formed all across its surface, and bloody gashes tore through her originally flawless clothes. However, her expression looked as frigid as ever, and she simply reacted by pouring more power into Yuan Qi's barrier while holding up her own. "Master, have you gone insane?" The soul message sounded shaky even though it wasn't voiced. "You can't save me. I'll only drag both you and the Snow Song Realm down. Leave. Please leave already." The 13 god emperors that came after him represented the peak of the world's power and authority. No one could defy them, and no one could save him. What Xuanian was doing was no different from committing suicide. Worse, the Snow Song Realm would be caught up in this as well. He just couldn't understand why she had chosen to do this. Bang! At this point, the cracks had spread across the whole barrier. It was at this moment a cold and painful voice replied, "If you can abandon everything and die for the heavenly slaughter star god, then why can't I abandon the Snow Song Realm for you? You are not the only one in the world who gets to act selfishly." Crack. The Ice Phoenix barrier finally exploded into countless pieces, and the blood Xuanian was holding in burst out of her lips like a fountain. Her figure started falling rapidly like a swan that was shot. However, a new figure of ice took form in an instant, and Xuanian spent all of her blood essence to create a gigantic frozen end heaven ceiling formation with unnatural speed. It locked down the Eternal Heaven God Emperor and the Brahma Heaven God Emperor, immediately slowing down their power and their movements. Countless icy needles penetrated Ni Yuan and Zhou Zuzi's body, causing their facial features to be overcome by shock once more. They charged toward Xuanian again while resisting the effects of the frozen end heaven ceiling formation. It had barely been a few breaths since they clashed against the Snow Song Realm King, but they were already practically giving it all they had. The blue of Ice Phoenix profound light looked terribly grim and sad after Xuanian had sacrificed her blood essence. Even the ice that kept Yuan Qi sealed and protected had undergone a slight change. Yuan Qi was only a divine king, but the shockwaves of energies from the two attacking god emperors weren't able to harm him at all. Xuanian's increasingly bloody figure slowly occupied Yuan Qi's vision. His mind fell into completely chaos once more. "She should have told you many times already that she isn't your master anymore, but it seems like you have never truly understood the true meaning behind those words, or perhaps you did not dare to believe it. Xuanian, let's send Senior Jia Yuan off together, okay? All right. Today is the death anniversary of Masters and Palace Master Bingyun's father. On this day every year, Master and Palace Master Bingyun will go and pay their respects to him. As a result, Master and Palace Master Bingyun harbor an extreme hatred towards devils and they will kill them on sight. I can't leave here, so I chose Xuanian to protect and guide you. I interfered with her soul through the Ice Phoenix divine soul. The reason she treated you so well is a product of my interference, and not something out of her own will. If it is removed, she will no longer be under my influence. She might even want to kill you. Master said that she does not wish to see you. She said she's too busy to send off the heaven-smiting devil emperor." Yuan Qi closed his eyes. His soul had never been this shaken before. What is real? What is fake? Boom! A loud boom shook the space once more, and the blue light protecting Xuanian flickered and died. A long trail of blood was painted across space before her back slammed into Yuan Qi's ice barrier. Half her body was drenched in blood after the repeated barrages of the two god emperors. However, Yuan Qi was still completely unharmed. At this point, everyone knew that Xuanian was spending most of her energy protecting Yuan Qi, using only the vestiges to protect herself from the two god emperors. "You don't have to do this, Snow Song Realm King," the Eternal Heaven God Emperor said. "You are strong, Snow Song Realm King. You're probably as strong as Yinger already, but your strength isn't a reflection of your intelligence. To think you would commit yourself to a useless death for your disciple, a devil person." Ni Yuan's palm glowed golden, and he said, "You're probably the stupidest woman I've ever seen in my life." If she had fought the two god emperors with her full strength, she would have been able to hold her ground for a time. But she had saved only 40% strength for herself, and so the two god emperors were able to wound her grievously with a one-sided barrage. At this point, her eyes were even starting to lose focus. "Sigh, what a shame," the Eternal Heaven God Emperor said with a sigh before moving into action. He was far beyond the point of no return, and he must eliminate this mistake from the surface of the world no matter what. He couldn't allow the devil god of the prophecy to come true. By now, Xuanian's aura had become largely diminished. She thrust the Snow Princess sword toward the Eternal Heaven God Emperor's giant palm mark, but the icy flash of her attack seemed impossibly weak. However, the moment the tip of the sword came into contact with the palm mark, A strange glint suddenly flashed across Mu Xunian's unfocused eyes. She abruptly spat a mouthful of blood onto the Snow Princess sword. Inside the ice barrier, Yuan Qi's Ice Phoenix bloodline suddenly trembled violently. The blood Mu Xunian spat out was her Ice Phoenix origin blood. All of her Ice Phoenix origin blood. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor's palm mark, and even the golden profound light Kyanai Fansion was gathering suddenly froze unnaturally. On the other hand, the diminished profound light around Mu Xunian suddenly grew several times. No, dozens of times stronger than it was before. "Ah, Ma's master!" Yuan Qi screamed out in his mind. That was clearly Broken Moon Oblivion. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor and the Brahma Heaven God Emperor's pupils were suddenly dyed blue as an icy chill, and a sense of fear suddenly crept into their bodies. They felt as if their power and their bodies had sunk into an invisible mud they couldn't pull free of. Inside the slowed world of ice, Mu Xunian thrust the Snow Princess sword and watched it penetrate the Eternal Heaven God Emperor's palm mark, his palm, and finally his chest. An azure-colored, profound formation exploded soundlessly from the center of the Eternal Heaven God Emperor's chest, releasing a multitude of colors that enveloped the world. HMMPF! The Eternal Heaven God Emperor groaned as half his palm flew away into space. In fact, the severed palm had turned into bits of ice the moment it became separated from his body. At the same time, the explosion of blue enveloped Kyanai Fansion completely before knocking both God Emperors backwards, all the while feeling like they had fallen into an icy abyss. The profound energy holding down Yuan Qi and Mu Xunian disappeared in that instant. WH? What? Oh no! The attack that knocked back two God Emperors at once was without a doubt a sight to behold, but what really worried the God Emperors present was the fact that Yuan Qi had regained his mobility after the attack had dispelled the profound energy on him. He only had an instant to move, but it was enough for him to do what he needed to do. The Dragon Monarch, the Southern Sea God Emperor, the Shishan God Emperor, the Guardians of Eternal Heaven, and the Brahma Kings all released their profound energy immediately. But it was already too late. They could only watch as the ice barrier that protected Yuan Qi vanished the instant the two enemy God Emperors' power was dispelled. At the same time, a gray flash appeared in Yuan Qi's hand. The Void Illusion Stone. Go! Mu Xunian's impossibly weak but fierce voice appeared in his mind. But instead of crushing the Void Illusion Stone, Yuan Qi gathered all of his strength and tossed the object. The Void Illusion Stone cut a streak of light across space and flew straight toward Mu Xunian. Mu Xunian had spent all of her blood essence and origin blood. Both her aura and her life force were fading rapidly. It was true that she had created a miracle when she knocked back two God Emperors with a single strike. But even that miracle could only last for an instant. The Dragon Monarch, Southern Sea, Shishan, the Guardians, and the Brahma Kings had reacted immediately. Even the Eternal Heaven God Emperor and the Brahma Heaven God Emperor had regained control over themselves. Right now, Mu Xunian didn't even have the power to escape. The only thing that could save her was the Void Illusion Stone. But before the Void Illusion Stone could hit her, Mu Xunian extended her hand gently and dispelled all of the force surrounding the object in an instant. She had caught the Void Illusion Stone perfectly. Yuan Qi turned deathly pale after seeing this. Mu Xunian flipped her palm around in an attempt to toss it right back at Yuan Qi, but an overwhelming pressure that felt like the sky itself was already falling right on top of her head. If she tossed the Void Illusion Stone now, it would be destroyed immediately. She abruptly altered her posture and poured out all of her remaining power. She lifted an Ice Phoenix barrier with her left hand and encased Yuan Qi in ice again with her right. This time, she had spent 90% of her power on Yuan Qi. RRRMMBB, the noise was so loud that the entire world was silenced. The Dragon Monarch pressed a hand against the Ice Phoenix barrier, but didn't do any damage to it at all. His expression was also completely devoid of emotion. However, a draconic figure appeared out of nowhere and passed right through the barrier and Mu Xunian. Long Bai was the one and only emperor of the four divine regions, and the supreme ruler of the primal chaos. His power represented the ceiling of power of the entire world. How many people had had the fortune to witness his skill firsthand? Ring. An extremely soft ring cut through space, and the Ice Phoenix barrier suddenly vanished like mist. Mu Xunian's pupils turned completely blank, and she slowly fell down like a snowflake being carried by the wind. Bang! It was at this moment that the layer of ice sealing Yuan Qi completely disintegrated. The power of the Dragon Monarch had been far too horrific. Even though it was only the excess energy from that attack, it had still directly destroyed the protection that Mu Xunian had given to Yuan Qi with her last remaining bit of strength. Blood gushed from every part of Yuan Qi's body. In that instant, he felt as if his body had been torn into countless pieces, but the intense pain that racked his entire body told him that he was still alive in an incomparably clear manner. With a slowly fading ice aura and broken layers of ice, she still fought to protect his life. Her snowy robes were dyed bright red, and that fantastical ice-blue hair was swiftly losing its icy glow, turning black bit by bit. She was like a broken winged butterfly in the icy air, falling into a dark abyss which light never visited. "Master!" Yuan Qi let out a blood-filled cry as he rushed forward in a frenzied manner. Even though his entire body had been heavily injured, his heretic god gates instantly opened up to the Hell Monarch gate, his speed surpassing his previous limits. After the Dragon Monarch, the Southern Sea God Emperor Shishin, 4 of the Guardians, and 3 of the Brahma Kings arrived one after the other. Zhou Zhuzi and Qianai Fanshan had also returned at this point. After receiving the scare of nearly letting Yuan Qi get away in that instant, every single one of them no longer dared to hesitate. Even though they were facing the Mu Xunian who had clearly been fatally wounded by the Dragon Monarch's palm, they still attacked together as they desired to shove her and Yuan Qi into the realm of death. They did not want to give any leeway or chance to escape. 4 God Emperors and 7 high-level Divine Masters attacked simultaneously. This was a power so terrifying that it was enough to obliterate a small star region. Looks of astonishment appeared on the Divine Masters behind them as profound energy started surging through their bodies as they protected themselves. In front of such a mighty force, Mu Xunian, whose profound light had been completely extinguished, and Yuan Qi, who was rushing towards her, seemed as insignificant and tiny as grains of sand. "Ooh-ag!" This roar was incomparably hoarse and pain-filled, and it sounded like it had come from a despairing beast. The moment they made their attack, Yuan Qi finally managed to touch Mu Xunian's body with one hand, while his other hand grasped onto an icy blue light. The Snow Princess sword, Mu Xunian's beloved sword that she was never without. He cradled Mu Xunian in her arms and hugged her tightly, as if he was embracing the entire universe. It was just that this universe was so cold that it pierced the heart. He suddenly thrust out the Snow Princess sword in his hand, his vital energy being spent at an incredible rate, drawing a gigantic ice-blue arc of light in the air. This spreading arc of light was the most powerful performance of a technique in his entire life. Moon Star Restoration. In that instant, in the space in front of him, that vast emptiness that was being enveloped by the power of those God Emperors and Divine Masters, the laws completely reversed. Immediately, the attacks that the 4 God Emperors and 7 Divine Masters had made with all of their might fiercely rebounded against them. It was as if their attacks were beams of light that had come into contact with a reflective barrier. The spreading profound light completely engulfed all of the space behind them in the next instant. Trum. No one could have foreseen the events abruptly unfolding in front of them which completely defied all logic and common sense, so it was even less likely that they would have guarded against it. As that earth-shaking explosion shook the air, the 4 God Emperors and the 7 Divine Masters who had just made their attacks were blasted away in an instant. This included even the Dragon Monarch himself. The one who had been especially affected was the Eternal Heaven God Emperor, who had already been hurt by Mu Xunian's slash. An arrow of blood that was more than 30 meters long wildly spewed from his mouth, and his body tumbled in the air as he was sent flying. In the area behind them, the other God Emperors and higher realm kings who had simply been watching from the sidelines were instantly engulfed by that calamitous power, which incited cries of fear and wails of misery to echo underneath that apocalyptic profound light. To be able to become the realm kings of upper star realms, every single one of them had to possess strength that stood at the pinnacle of this universe. However, the combined power that came from 4 God Emperors and 7 Divine Masters was extremely hard for even people like them to endure, and many of them suffered serious injuries in that instant. The explosive rumbling in his ears suppressed all the sound in the world, but not a single ripple entered Yuan Qi's world. He hugged Mu Xunian's body. Her icy aura had clearly completely faded away, and even her icy hair had lost its surreal and fantastical icy blue tint. But why did her arms still feel as cold as ever? Ma's Tur! His voice trembled with such intensity, but it did not match how violently his own body was trembling. As she lay in his arms, her skin was as translucent and lustrous as pearl. Her jade face was still so perfectly beautiful and flawless, but it no longer contained even the slightest hint of its previous imperious might. In fact, the expression on her face looked so sad and beautiful that it could shatter a person's heart and soul. Muxunian's eyelashes gently fluttered, as if they were a pair of butterfly wings caught in the wind. It was just that her eyes no longer contained that frightful icy light. Instead, they looked dim and vacant. That hand, which was even more lustrously white than snow, slowly rose to touch Yuan-Chi's cheek. Startling trails of blood dripped down her arm, staining the void illusion stone that had already been dyed the color of blood. "Live on?" Her voice was as faint and wispy as mist in a dream, and those two short words used up the very last bit of icy light that remained in her eyes. The hand that had just touched Yuan-Chi's cheek fell limply, as it brought along the void illusion stone with it. She had wanted to see Yuan-Chi's face clearly, had wanted to tell him that she did not want them to be student and teacher again in their next lives. However, fate was not even willing to grant her very last wish. Craw, crack, crack, even though his teeth were cracking. One after the other, Yuan-Chi did not feel any pain. He bent down and tightly hugged Muxunian's completely lifeless body as his heart was being shredded apart by the cruelest and most wicked knives in the world over and over again. His eyes lost all their color, and only a terrifying, gloomy blackness remained in them. However, the tears were flowing from his eyes like water from a broken dam as they poured down his face. He was unable to stop them. He had personally witnessed the blue pole star being reduced to dust, causing him to lose all of his family. But he had not cried because that had been a sort of tearless despair. It had been like a nightmare that was far too cruel, an event so dark and dim that it felt like an illusion. However, Muxunian's life had slowly ebbed away in his arms, making it so that even his desire to treat it as an illusory nightmare was nothing but an extravagant wish. Woo, woo. Those low and deep sobs were filled with boundless pain and sorrow, like a wild dog who had broken bones all over its body. The last time he had cried uncontrollably was when he had found Chu Yuechen and Yun Wuxin once more on that day. It was the first time that he had truly felt grateful to the heavens, the first time that he truly appreciated the beauty of this world. In fact, all of the wickedness and hardship in the world seemed so small and insignificant to him on that day. But this time, his tears told him just how cold and merciless this world was, just how sorrowful and cruel fate could be. The blood-stained, void illusion stone had fallen into his palm, and he was tightly clutching it. This was the only ray of hope left to him. He had wanted to leave it to Muxunian, but she had stubbornly given it back to him. "Live on?" Those were her last words, her last wish. In the distant space, the profound light had finally dissipated. Every single one of the gathered god emperors and divine masters looked battered and disheveled, to the point where all of them had been in a state of shock for a period of time. Even given the knowledge and experience they had built up in their lives, they were still completely befuddled by what had just happened. But in that instant, Xia Qingyu swiftly sent a sound transmission to Yue Wuji. "Restrain him, Riep." When everyone else was still floundering about, flowing golden light abruptly swept over Yue Wuji as his body cut through space and shot towards Yuan-Chi. Yuan-Chi bowed his head and hugged Muxunian. He did not move an inch, and his body was like an empty shell which had lost its soul. But just as Yue Wuji neared him, he suddenly saw Yuan-Chi slowly raise his head to look at him. That was a pair of incredibly gloomy and vacant eyes, and the moment their gazes met, Yue Wuji actually felt as if he was staring into a bottomless abyss, an abyss that could devour everything. Every single nerve in his body, every single part of his soul uncontrollably tensed up all of a sudden, and his body even slowed down a little because it. In the next instant, a blue light suddenly exploded in the space above Yuan-Chi. "R-O-O-O-A-R." A despairing dragon's cry resounded in every inch of space, completely pervading the souls of everyone who heard it. Yue Wuji's vision blacked out for a moment as his body was sent cartwheeling through the air dozens of times before he finally forced his body to stop. His eyes beheld the gigantic image of a dragon that was raising its head towards the heavens and bellowing. The dragon's body was as azure as a blue sky, but a gloomy black light radiated from that pair of dragon eyes, and it was accompanied by an incomparably terrifying draconic might. Under this draconic might, Yue Wuji, the moon god realm's #1 moon god, who was only inferior to the moon god emperor herself, could clearly feel a dark and cold fear spread throughout his entire body. And this fear actually made him not dare to take a single step forward for a period of time. The dragon monarch's body was rooted in place, and as he stared at the distant image of the dragon god with pitch-black dragon eyes, the pupils of his own eyes were silently quivering. The two dots of pitch-black light which shone from those dragon eyes seemed to pervade every corner of this world. It swept past everyone's faces, everyone's bodies, everyone's auras and souls, firmly carving the special characteristics of everyone present into the deepest part of its soul, never to be erased. Bang! With a very soft ringing sound, that void illusion stone which Kei had exchanged with Wu Geik back then, the void illusion stone which she had then casually tossed to Yuan Qi, was shattered to pieces in his hand. It released an invisible spatial divine power which whisked both Yuan Qi and Mu Xuanian away from that place. It was only when they stared at the suddenly empty space in front of them that everyone seemed to awaken from a dream. Oh no, BOOM. As energy explosions wildly rang in the air, many figures dashed towards the spot where Yuan Qi had previously been with extreme speed. But they could not find any trace of him or spatial residue left behind by the void illusion stone. Crack, crack, crack. Kai Fanshan clenched his hands so tightly that his knuckles popped as he growled through gritted teeth. We actually let him get away again, that damned Snow Song Realm King. 13 god emperors had been gathered here today, and Yuan Qi had appeared as well, but they let him escape once more. This was practically the biggest and most absurd joke in the universe. In fact, even if one of them spoke about it, no one would believe them. Not only had Yuan Qi gotten away, the blue pole star had been destroyed as well. He had come here specially for this, but it had actually all been for nothing. He had not gained a single thing. K. The eternal heaven god emperor clutched a hand to his chest, and it was clear that his wounds were not light. He gave a heavy sigh before saying, both times he escaped, it was because of a void illusion stone. A spatial divine artifact of this level is too hard to preempt. However, it isn't possible that he has a third one. As he thought of those pitch-black pupils reflected in Yuan Qi's eyes when he escaped, and those dark dragon eyes which caused even his heart palpitate for an instant, his chest violently heaved, and he said in a deep voice, reissue this command, we must kill him at all costs. Given his strength, he is definitely on his last legs. Ha! To think that a woman who possessed the power of a god emperor would be willing to sacrifice her life for a devil that is only 30 years of age. What a joke this is, the Southern Sea God Emperor said in a low voice. HMPH. There were so many of us, but we couldn't keep that weak devil from escaping. That's the real joke. It's simply the biggest joke in the history of the god realm. If it gets out, even this king would feel embarrassed. Xia Qingyu said icily. She turned around and said in a cold voice, Wuji, let's return to our realm. That's right. She suddenly turned around, her cold and imperious voice ringing in everybody's ears. The Snow Song Realm King used her own life to protect the devil, so her crimes extend beyond her death. However, her guilt in this matter does not extend to the tiny Snow Song Realm. This king owes a debt of gratitude to the Snow Song Realm, so if anyone dares to harm the Snow Song Realm over this matter, don't blame this king for being impolite. Each word resounded with a heavenly might, and they left no room for doubt. Given the mercilessness and extreme cruelty she had displayed today, no one would dare to touch her bottom line. Once she had finished speaking, she left in a cold and indifferent manner, as she also brought the vanishing moon's celestial palace she had forcefully taken back from Yuan Qi along with her. The order to pursue and kill Yuan Qi once again rang throughout the eastern divine region with utmost urgency, and it swiftly spread to the western divine region and southern divine region afterwards. Now there was no one in the 3 divine regions who was still unaware that Yuan Qi had become a devil and had committed heinous and unforgivable crimes. Furthermore, since he possessed the heretic god's divine power, if they did not kill him as soon as possible, he would definitely become a colossal threat in the future. The far too violent upheaval during this period seemed to be telling everyone in the god realm that exterminating the devil Yuan Qi was now everyone's top priority, a matter that surpassed everything else in importance. As for what sort of grave and heinous crimes he had actually committed, they were barely mentioned by any of the king realms. As for the news of the devil emperor returning and Yuan Qi saving the world, not a single word of it was released, not a single word. This was limited to the king realms. After they had witnessed the stance assumed by the king realms, The upper star realms who knew the truth all obediently chose to remain silent without even needing a reminder. Because right now, the ones who could decide one's fate were no longer Jai Yuan and Yun Qi, but the King Realms. Furthermore, amongst all the King Realms, the one who was most fervent in its pursuit of Yun Qi was the Eternal Heaven God Realm. In the short span of a single day, the Eternal Heaven God Emperor had personally issued 6 voices of Eternal Heaven. He had lost a large quantity of his blood essence during his attempt to destroy the Crimson Passage. He had lost half a hand when battling Mu Xunian, and after that, he had been heavily injured by Yun Qi's Moon Star Restoration. But he did not seem to have any intention of getting his injuries treated. Not only did he personally give those orders and make the appropriate arrangements, he also personally rushed to any scene where they found even the faintest of clues or traces of Yun Qi's whereabouts. It was as if he needed to personally witness Yun Qi's death before he could finally feel at ease. The rewards that he was offering up were also exceptionally extravagant. People who provided information were rewarded with a large amount of divine crystals, and anyone who assisted in or performed the act of capturing or killing Yun Qi would forever be recognized as disciples of the Eternal Heaven God Realm. No matter how ordinary one's background was or how lowly one's status was, if they were able to help capture or kill Yun Qi, they would become a member of a king realm overnight. This enticement was undoubtedly as great as the heavens themselves, and it caused countless profound practitioners to go into a frenzy. This was especially true for the profound practitioners belonging to lower or middle star realms. They crazily searched all over the place as they were driven by the beautiful dream of being able to enter a king realm in the span of a single day. They had practically completely forgotten that Yun Qi, who had placed first in the conferred god battle during the profound god convention, had once been the pride and joy of all of these lower and middle star realms. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor's efforts and determination to kill Yun Qi were so resolute and decisive that it shocked everyone who heard of them. However, the Eternal Heaven God Emperor never revealed that dreadful prophecy to anyone else, and he also forbade the heavenly mystery 3 elders from announcing it to the public. Kill Yun Qi. For a very long time following this event, these were the 3 words that would ring out in the God realm the most. In the distant east, on a barren and nearly lifeless lower realm planet, a man sat curled up on the cracked and withered ground. His white robes were stained with blood, and even though the blood had dried long ago, he did not notice. He tightly hugged a woman who was wearing snowy robes in his arms. But the Ice Phoenix sigil that represented the most exalted status within the Snow Song realm had already been completely dyed in blood. He tightly hugged the woman. His eyes were vacant, and he did not move an inch. He resembled a lifeless statue, a bleak and sorrowful painting. This world was desolate and silent, so no one would disturb them. Time silently flowed by, and he did not know how much time had passed. Perhaps it had been a few hours, a few days, or perhaps it had been a few years. This was until a dry wind started blowing, covering this bleak painting in layers and layers of sand and dust. He Ling appeared and gently knelt beside Yun Qi. She stretched out a hand, but the moment she was about to touch the corner of his robe, she slowly pulled it back instead. She had clearly witnessed everything that had happened over the last few days. He had been a hero who had saved the world, a god-child feted by the entire universe. But the moment he had finished saving the world, all of this was taken from him in the span of a single night, and he had even become a devil who was being chased by the entire universe. How ironic, how woeful. She was the person who was closest to Yun Qi's soul, and the pain, melancholy, and despair he felt. Even touching a tiny bit of it was enough to cause her excruciating pain. Pain which made her feel like her soul was being ripped apart. In the wood spirit's world, this universe had always been cruel. This was especially true for He Ling. Her parents and her kinsmen had all died one by one due to the greed of the other races. Even her very last family member, He Lin, who had held the last hopes of her race, had also eternally departed from this universe, and she had not even been able to see him one last time. She had originally thought that there was nothing in the world that could be crueler or more despairing than this. But, "Master," she softly said, "let your master properly rest." Yun Qi did not give any response. He Ling did not say anything after that. She merely sat quietly by his side. Back then, Xianxia had told her that Yun Qi was a very special person more than once. If another profound practitioner possessed Yun Qi's innate talent and good fortune, it definitely would have birthed ambition, and a thirst for power in their heart that would have only gotten stronger. But he did not possess those things. Instead, what she had sensed the most from him during his stay in the forbidden land of samsara were cares and concerns. He valued relationships more than he valued the pursuit of power or the profound way. And the value that he had placed on relationships was far higher than the value he had placed on the latter too. Even though he had become famous throughout the entire God realm, he did not have a single thought of abandoning the lower realms, and he had even turned away from all of the carrots dangled in front of him by the king realms. Because his family was in the lower realms, he would not stay in the God realm. Moreover, even his motive for coming to the God realm had not been to pursue a higher level. It had merely been for the sake of finding a person he cared about. Yes, even after he had become the God-child Messiah, and he could speak with all the great God emperors as an equal, the most important things to him were still his family, his wives, his daughter, and his lovers. But it was also due to this reason that the heavenly slaughter star god had become the evil infant because of him, and was also willing to depart to the lower realms together with him forever. This was also the reason why Xianxia was willing to abandon the Snow Song realm and sacrifice her life for him. However, this was not the repayment that he had wanted. As someone whose life had been tied to Yuan Qi for the last few years, the Yuan Qi that He Ling had observed was exactly as Xianxia had described. Yet these things that were the most important to him in his life had all been lost. Everything, splash! An ice-cold droplet of water fell and landed on He Ling's face, causing her to raise her head to look at the sky, which had quietly dimmed at some point in time. As more water droplets started falling, it suddenly started raining in this world which was normally dry and cracked. Furthermore, this rain was growing heavier and heavier, and it turned into a downpour in the blink of an eye. The violent rain drenched the woman's snowy robes and soaked her long hair which no longer possessed any of that icy light. The man still remained completely motionless, as if he was just a shell bereft of a soul and a sense of touch. "Master," He Ling's sobbing voice rang out amidst the pouring rain. "Your master has actually always been a very vain person, so she's never been willing to let her hair get messy, especially when she was in front of master." So? Yuan Qi's dim and befuddled eyes started to faintly tremble as the hands which tightly grasped Xianxia started to silently quake. Xianxia's figure slowly started to appear in those eyes, which had lost their color for the longest time. Even though she was completely bereft of life, she still looked as beautiful as an unblemished goddess in a painting. Anyone who looked at her would have her image engraved into their hearts forever, and they would never be able to forget it. Master? No, she wasn't his master. Wasn't the Snow Song Realm king. It was the person who had kicked him out of the sect, the person who had sacrificed both her life and the Snow Song Realm for his sake. It had been the complete and whole Xianxia, whose thoughts and intentions were not being influenced by someone else. The Xianxia who belonged to him alone. However, why did this beautiful thing only last for such a brief moment? It had been like a brilliant, multicolored bubble that had popped after an instant. He slowly straightened his body and stood up, his movements incomparably slow and rigid, like a wooden puppet whose strings had been cut. Profound light briefly flashed before a crystal coffin which shone with a faint luster appeared in front of him. This was the coffin of eternity Hunger had slept in all those years ago. The rain was growing more and more violent, more and more crazy. Sodden hair blocked his vision, and it seemed as if he could not feel the temperature of the rain that was falling on his body. He knelt on the ground and bent his body forward as he very gently and slowly placed Xianxia's body into the coffin of eternity. His hand trembled as he pressed down on her body and released pale white light profound energy, cleansing her of all bloodstains and dirt, while also getting rid of all the rain and dampness on her body and clothes. When he raised his hand again, the coffin eternity slowly closed up with a gentle ring, just like Yuan Qi's sealed-off heart and soul. For the sake of the heavenly slaughter star god, even though you were well aware that you would definitely die, even though you were well aware that you could not even save her, you still raced across a great distance to reach the star god realm, and you used the power that you exchanged your own life for so all those people could die together with you. How awe-inspiring and impressive, how deeply moving. Heh! You died happily and terribly, you died a death that was wrought by deep emotions, you did right by your heavenly slaughter star god. However, do you know how many people have paid the price just to ensure that you lived? How much blood and effort these people extended to preserve your life? They took great risks, and nearly even gambled the future of an entire star realm to give you the opportunity to take refuge in the dragon god realm. Yet you still wanted to rush to your own death despite knowing that you were going to die. Have you done right by them? Have you done right by yourself? Have you done right by your wives and family members who were waiting for your return in the lower realm? Besides the heavenly slaughter star god, who else have you ever done right by? You're not allowed to call me master. Muke Shuanian once again sealed his lips as she shouted, I took you as my disciple, allowed you to use the heavenly Netherfrost Lake as you pleased, bestowed upon you the best resources in the entire realm. In order to quickly help you ascend to the divine tribulation realm, I put aside everything related to the sect and personally helped you cultivate, not leaving your side through night and day. But this is how you would repay me. This is how you would repay the Snow Song realm. I, Muke Shuanian, don't have a foolish disciple like you. That was harshest rebuke Muke Shuanian had ever given him. The look in her eyes on that day, her anger and the heavy rebuke that lingered in every word she said, were things that Yuan Qi had not dared to forget. But why did you? As a master, you committed the exact same mistake as your disciple. No, you committed an even sillier and graver mistake. With another flash of profound light, he sent the coffin of eternity into the primordial profound arc, because he knew that Muke Shuanian loved the color blue the most. Inside the world of the primordial profound arc, she would be able to look at a boundless azure sky, and not the eternal moss-green light that irradiated the world of the sky poison pearl. Muke Shuanian's existence vanished from his eyes, and in that instant, both his eyes and his world suddenly became empty. He slowly trudged forward as he welcomed the violent rain. His footsteps were stiff and slow, like the steps of an old man who was past his prime. His eyes were so dull and dim that not a trace of light could be seen in them. He did not know where he was, did not know where he should go, or where he could even still go, and he did not know where his future would lead him. He only knew that he was not allowed to die, because his life had been bought by Muke Shuanian's own, because this was her final wish. But why was living so painful, so filled with despair? Master, master! He Ling trailed behind him as she kept crying out to him, but she could not provoke a single response from him. With a small thud, the tip of his foot tripped over a protruding rock, sending him sprawling heavily to the ground. His arm heavily smashed into the ground in a contorted position, smacking against the hard stone that had swung out on the cord around his neck. It was the glazed sound stone that he always wore and had never been willing to take off. Daddy Wuxin misses you. The tender and sweet voice of young girl rang out amidst the lashing ice-cold rain. Yuan Qi's prostrate body suddenly froze in place. After that, his gloomy eyes and his rigid body started to crazily quiver and shake. Ah, woo! It was as if someone was tightly gripping his throat as incomparably hoarse and painful noises leaked out from his mouth. Woo! You-ah! Ah-eh-eh-eh-eh-ch-ch-ch-ch-ch-ch! He was like an evil spirit whose soul had been completely shattered and broken down. He wailed loudly as he screamed hoarsely in despair. He crazily smashed his head against the ground as his arms beat against his own skull in a frenzy. UWA! Ch-ch-ch-ch-ch-ch-ch-ch-ch-ch. Each wail was more shrill and mournful, and it was as if his throat had been completely ripped apart. It was impossible for anyone to imagine what sort of pain would actually cause a person to let out a cry that was even more shrill and miserable than an evil spirit's. Large amounts of blood trailed down his head, arms, and body, but he hardly felt any pain as he desperately smashed his head against the ground. The tears that he thought were already dried up frantically flowed from his eyes like water from a burst dam, and even the pouring rain and splashing blood could not wash them away. He Ling did not move forward or try to stop him. She merely closed her eyes and silently wept. After an indeterminate amount of time had passed, his wailing finally stopped. His body lay flat on the ground, and he did not move for a very long time. The rain continued to pour down, washing away the bloodstains on Yuan Qi's body. Another long period of time passed, but he still lay there unmoving. His homeland, his family, his kinsmen, his wives, his daughter, his lovers, his sect, his friends, his fame, his status, his glory. All of the most valuable and important things in his life had been lost to him. Losing these things had also meant the loss of all of his attachments, warmth, hope, and love. Master! He Ling gave a soft cry. She was no longer able to hold herself back, and she wanted to rush to his side. But when she finally took a single step forward, she suddenly froze in place. After that, her legs started to move backwards uncontrollably as an indescribable coldness, Oppression and terror assaulted her soul. Heh heh, heh heh heh. An incomparably deep and hoarse laugh rang out in the air, and it sounded like it came from the depths of an incomparably distant purgatory. Within that puddle of blood, the figure that had lain dormant for a long period of time slowly rose to its feet. It was accompanied by dense black energy that gradually built up, before it started to wildly surge. Heh heh, he, ha 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 ha. He firmly gripped his own face with his spread fingers, and even though his face was being obscured by his palm, the features that could be seen in between those 5 fingers were utterly sinister and terrifying. Black energy chaotically curled up around his body like countless wildly dancing, bloodthirsty evil spirits. "No, I am not left with nothing," he spoke in an incomparably deep and gloomy voice. This voice had clearly come from a person that was most familiar to He Ling, but it sounded completely foreign and terrifying to her ears. "I still have my life. I still have this hatred. Ahhhhhhh. Heh heh. Crack. A bolt of lightning suddenly fell to the ground without any warning. The deep purple glow of the lightning caused a pitch-black shadow to appear behind Yuan-Chi. The light generated by that bolt of lightning disappeared, but that dark shadow still remained. Instead, it started to contort and twist sinisterly to the sound of Yuan-Chi's laughter, like a malicious and violent devil god who had finally obtained freedom after having been imprisoned for a long time. He Ling stared at the scene unfolding in front of her for a very long time. After that, she walked forward and enfolded Yuan-Chi in a light and gentle embrace, completely leaning her body and her delicate head against him, allowing her emerald eyes to be dyed with an ever-deepening gloom by the surging black light that danced around his body. When a dull rumble rang out, everyone raised their heads subconsciously and were stunned by what they saw. The sky that was previously clear and cloudless had accumulated layer upon layer of dark clouds, and the entire universe had darkened quickly because of this. A heavy oppressive force covered the universe silently, and this birthed an uncontrollable uneasiness in everyone's heart, an uneasiness that grew stronger with every passing minute. It was just that they did not know what this uneasy feeling was. The black clouds that had arrived so suddenly departed, just as quickly as they came. The black clouds had completely scattered in a short span of time, and even though it was a little strange, a strange sight that had lasted such a short period of time would be thrown to the back of one's mind almost immediately. Thus, no one would have known that the black clouds had not only appeared in a certain patch of sky or at a certain planet, they had completely covered the entire god realm, moon god realm. Xia Qingyu stared fixedly at the sky and witnessed the appearance and disappearance of those black clouds. What strange clouds! Jin Yue, who stood beside her, could not help herself and said, "It actually seems like 4 years ago when She let out a frightened cry before lowering her head and covering her mouth. This servant girl has said too much." The black clouds had dispersed completely, and the sky was bright once again. Xia Qingyu turned around and slowly made her way to her bedchambers. "I need to be in seclusion for a while. Before I come out of seclusion, all matters, big or small, will be decided by Yao Yue and Wuji. Unless the matter is of grave importance, you must not disturb me." "Yes." Jin Yue gaped with a startled expression, but after that, she acknowledged obediently. As Jin Yue watched Xia Qingyu's departing figure, she turned absent-minded for a long while. She did not know if it was just a misperception, but she sensed that Xia Qingyu seemed to be extremely exhausted. At the same time, the Brahma monarch god realm. Ni Yuan turned his gaze away from the sky. The black clouds that had covered the sky made him frown for a long while. After that, he turned around, and with a flash of golden light, he arrived at the heaven temple that Ni Yuan was residing in. Ni Yuan's Brahma soul had been dispersed, and the Brahma monarch divine power she had inherited had scattered. Although a few days had passed, both her profound veins and her vitality had still not completely recovered. Upon sensing that Ni Yuan had walked in, Ni Yuan's beautiful eyes opened. Her long hair was still that exceptionally gorgeous and brilliant shade of gold, but the golden light in her eyes had turned extremely dull. "Royal father!" She did not stand up, and although she was in her own chambers, she still wore a golden mask on her face. To Ni Yuan, this had already become a habit a long time ago, one that she had become numb to. "How is your recovery going?" Ni Yuan asked in an indifferent tone. In the past, Ni Yuan's aura had been so terrifying that even the god emperors had difficulty perceiving and penetrating it. But now, her Brahma monarch divine power had completely scattered, and her aura was weak and faint. But her power was still at the level of the Divine Master realm, and a fifth-level Divine Master at that. Even though the gap between her current power and her power when she was at her peak was so huge that it was incomprehensible to a normal person, she had still managed to retain the powers of a mid-stage Divine Master even after her Brahma Monarch divine powers had dissipated. One could imagine just how terrifying her innate talent and her accomplishments over the years had been. And she was not even 1,000 years old yet. On the other hand, she had used the Brahma Monarch divine power as the foundation for all the profound arts she had previously cultivated. As a result, after her Brahma Monarch divine power had been dispersed entirely, all of her profound arts had been completely crippled. Currently, the only thing she possessed was the most pure and ordinary profound energy, so she would not be able to contend against anyone who was on the same level as her. But the realization that she gained during her time of cultivation remained. Recultivating the Brahma God-related profound arts would surely be many times smoother compared to the past, after she inherited the Brahma Monarch divine power once again. 60%, Kainai Yinger suddenly asked. Do you have news of Yuan Qi? No, Kainai Fanchen said indifferently. The blue pole star was destroyed by Xia Qingyu. The Snow Song Realm king chose to throw her life away, and now we can't even find anything we can use to force him to appear. But given his strength, he will not be able to hide for long. HMPH? An icy light flashed in Kainai Yinger's eyes. It's a good thing that he escaped. This way, I will finally have the chance to personally rip him to shreds. As she stood up, Kainai Yinger released her aura and sensed the state of her profound strength and strength of her soul. She frowned as she said, So, in less than a month, I will have recovered to the extent where I can inherit the Brahma Monarch divine power once more. I was acknowledged once, so I will naturally be able to be acknowledged a second time. Within a few hundred years at most, I will definitely be able to recover to my peak state. Amen. Kainai Fanchen nodded his head. If it was someone else who had their divine power and divine soul scattered, being acknowledged a second time would be even harder than scaling the heavens. But if it is you, the likelihood truly is large. Let me take a look at the state of your profound strength. Yes, Kainai Yinger reined in her aura and thoughts at the same time. Kainai Fanchen drew close before he raised his arms and opened his palms. But a strange golden light suddenly flashed in the depths of his calm eyes. Screech! A blinding golden light lit up the calm hall like a blazing sun. In the midst of the golden light, Kainai Yinger let out a frightened scream. Countless golden strands entwined themselves around Kainai Yinger's entire body like a finely woven golden net, and firmly bound her entire being. It was like her body, and even her profound energy, had been suppressed by 10,000 mountains. It was impossible for her to break out or even struggle free. Royal Father, you... A startled expression flashed across her face, but she swiftly calmed down soon after and asked, Royal Father, what are you doing? She stopped struggling because she knew that it was impossible for her to struggle free given her current state. Kainai Fanchen put his arms down and turned around before speaking in a faint and indifferent voice. You can forget about inheriting the Brahma Monarch divine power again because you are no longer worthy of it. Kainai Yinger's gaze changed, and she felt a sudden chill run through her heart. This chilly feeling in her heart had not only appeared because of his word, it had appeared because of his tone as well, because Kainai Fanchen had never spoken to her in that tone before. Royal Father, what kind of joke are you making? The innate talent you had for the profound way, your single-minded focus, and your ambition led me to choose you as my successor without any hesitation back then. And subsequently, I even announced you as the future Brahma Monarch God Emperor to the world. Kainai Fanchen's eyes faintly narrowed as his tone grew colder. I had placed such great expectations on you, but you ended up disappointing me so greatly. Let you down? What huge mistake did I make? Kainai Yinger's golden brows sank as she did not know how she had disappointed him, or what mistake she had made. Even if she did make a huge mistake, why did he have to use the Brahma soul chains to bind her? What have I been teaching you all these years? Kainai Fanchen's tone did not carry a hint of anger, and not even a trace of pity could be heard. There was only a cold indifference that chilled one's heart. As the future Brahma Monarch God Emperor, you must carefully consider every aspect of every single matter. As long as you can accomplish your aims and fulfill your own interests, you can sacrifice everything. You can trick or rob anyone, even if you have to use unscrupulous methods to do so. But you sacrificed yourself to save another and were willing to be a slave for others. You have greatly disappointed me. Kainai Yinger's head jerked upwards. Even given her mindset, a dazed look appeared in her eyes for several breaths. I did it to save you. HMPH, save me. Did I command you or force you to do so? Kainai Fanchen spat out in an icy tone. I even gave you the Brahma soul bell, but you returned it to me and committed such a stupid act. Kainai Yinger. Furthermore, his tone became even more indifferent. From the moment you became Yuan Qi's slave, you thoroughly lost the qualifications to inherit the position as Brahma Monarch God Emperor. No, you don't even qualify to inherit the Brahma Monarch divine power anymore. Otherwise, that would be a disgrace to my Brahma Monarch God realm and a stain that we would never be able to erase. Kainai Yinger's entire being froze, and her golden eyes started to tremble in an incredibly violent fashion. She was in disbelief. She could not believe a single word. Becoming Yuan Qi's slave was undoubtedly the greatest sacrifice and greatest humiliation of her lifetime. It was a great shame and humiliation that she would have never been willing to bear even if her other choice was death. But for Kainai Fanchen, she had thrown all of her dignity at the feet of Yuan Qi and Xia Qingyu. Kainai Fanchen, her birth father, her one and only weakness according to Xia Qingyu. Her world was icy cold and ruthless. But it was also because of this that the only person that gave her warmth, the only person she could entrust her soul to, would be the greatest treasure in her life. She had never dreamed and simply could not believe that her great sacrifice had not only failed to earn her a gentler look from him, it had even earned her such indifference and heartless words. Kainai Fanchen had countless children and grandchildren, but he would never sugarcoat his words when speaking to them. But ever since her mother had passed away, he had been exceptionally indulgent and warm towards her and her alone, and he would give her anything that her heart desired. He had even announced that she would be the future God Emperor, and had given her authority that surpassed the 3 Brahma gods a long time ago. She had directly decided many important matters of the realm, and even if she made mistakes, whether they were big or small, he could never bear to punish and would always end up siding with her to the end. All these years, Kainai Yinger had directly or indirectly killed so many important figures in the various king realms. And even though they were king realms, no one had dared to truly make a move against her, because everyone knew her position in the Brahma Monarch God realm, and if they dared to touch her, they would be provoking the entire Brahma Monarch God realm. Kainai Fanchen had always treated her in such a manner, and thus, she had always seen Kainai Fanchen as her last and most important family, a father that she could not let down. Just like what she had said in front of her mother's grave, all of her years of single-minded focus and hard work, a very large part of it was so that she would not let her father down. But today, everything had suddenly become so incomparably unfamiliar and distant. Kainai Yinger closed her eyes. She did not get angry, neither did she question him. Instead, she asked in a low voice, perhaps it was indeed my fault. In this case, is royal father going to abandon me? No, Kainai Fanchen said. Although you don't have the qualifications to inherit the position of God Emperor or the Brahma Monarch divine power anymore, you are still useful for something else. Useful? Kainai Yinger gave a very soft and cold laugh. You bound me just because of this usefulness. You're so afraid of me running away, it looks like this usefulness must not be something that's viewed in a very good light then. The Southern Sea God Emperor is rushing over right now. Kainai Fanchen turned his gaze to look at her. His gaze remained as peaceful and indifferent as ever, without a single trace of reluctance or guilt. He will arrive in about an hour, and then he will bring you to the Southern Sea God realm. And with that, you will fulfill your last bit of usefulness. Kainai Yinger, who had maintained a sober expression all along, had an abrupt change of expression. Her pupils constricted, and she simply could not bring herself to believe a single word he had spoken. You want to give me to the Southern Sea God Emperor? She was able to understand what Kainai Fanchen had said previously as total disappointment. It was just as he had said. If someone who was once a slave to a devil succeeded the throne, it would indeed attract the ridicule and castigation of many, and it would end up bringing shame down on the entire Brahma Monarch God realm. He could strip her of her right to inherit the position of God Emperor. But how could he simply gift her to the Southern Sea God Emperor like a simple object? Her, the famous Brahma Monarch goddess, his daughter who abandoned all of her pride to save his life. Why are you so surprised? Isn't this a given? Kainai Fanchen spoke with indifference, as if he were speaking about an extremely ordinary matter. My Brahma Monarch God realm lost 2 Brahma kings because of the evil infant, then we lost the 3 Brahma gods because of the heaven-smiting devil emperor, and after that, Even your divine power and divine soul ended up being scattered. It could be said that we have suffered terrible losses and our prestige has been greatly reduced. So we definitely can't afford any more losses. The Southern Sea God Emperor has been yearning for you for a very long time, and no matter how brazen he was in the past, he did not dare to make any rash moves. But after we lost 2 Brahma kings and the 3 Brahma gods, he started to threaten us. But at that time, you had not made such a stupid decision yet, and so I would never have let him have his way. But now, the greatest value you can bring to the Brahma monarch god realm is to be gifted to him. Ni Yuan gave a small smile. In this current situation, even if I did not give you to him, given his temperament, he definitely wouldn't sit still. But there is a big difference in whether he snatches you with his tricks, or if I make the first move and give you to him. The latter will prevent any potential disaster, as well as creating an alliance with the Southern Sea God realm. Also, he will owe me an extremely huge favor. After all, to the Southern Sea God Emperor, women are more important than anything in this universe. And as for you, Yinger, he would not hesitate at any cost if he could obtain you. I am looking forward to seeing what kind of gift I will receive in return. Ni Yinger's lips trembled, but no words came out from her mouth. The father who stood in front of her actually seemed so foreign to her right now. No, it was at this moment that she suddenly realized that she had perhaps never truly understood her father or seen his true colors. Not even once. But before that, I have something important to do. Ni Yuan turned to the side and slowly walked toward Ni Yinger. As the most outstanding one out of all of my children, even if you do not have the Brahma monarch divine power, given your innate talent, you could perhaps reach the pinnacle of the divine master realm in the future. If I were not forced by circumstances, how could I bear to give you to the Southern Sea God Emperor? But given the innate talent you have, it would truly be a waste to simply give you to the Southern Sea God Emperor. And I think that the Southern Sea God Emperor wouldn't like it either. After all, if a woman is too strong and hard to control, that simply isn't something that is very beautiful. And so, he suddenly pointed a finger toward her, shooting a ray of golden light directly at Ni Yinger, which blossomed into a golden profound formation that spread out over her body. The moment that the profound formation was formed, countless auras suddenly bombarded Ni Yinger's profound veins like powerful currents, causing her profound veins, which had already been damaged by the dispersal of her Brahma monarch divine power, to explode. PFFFFT? Ni Yinger spat out 3 mouthfuls of blood consecutively, and her jade countenance contorted in agony. She firmly held back shrieks of pain, even though her entire body shook uncontrollably. She felt as if her soul was being trampled by a demon as her body curled up and trembled violently. She was a cruel and ruthless person. When she wanted to snatch the heretic god's powers back then, she had planted the Brahma soul death-wishing mark on Xianxia without a single frown on her face. But now she was unable to comprehend having to suddenly face such a ruthless and terrifying father. She would be more willing to believe that this was nothing but a preposterous and ruthless nightmare. Ni Yuan put his palm down, but the golden light continued to twist around Ni Yinger. He turned around and once again clasped his hands behind him as he gave her a small smile and said, "As such, from now on, your profound energy will gradually decline and scatter until it reaches the divine sovereign realm. In this lifetime, you will never be able to become a divine master again. In this way, the Southern Sea God Emperor won't be gaining too many benefits, and at the same time, it will end your intentions to ever kill your father. If you perform well enough once you reach the Southern Sea God realm, perhaps the Southern Sea God Emperor will be willing to confer you the title of Empress. Given how much I have nurtured you all these years, I believe that as long as you are willing, you will surely succeed. You definitely must not waste your last chance and last bit of value." Inside the golden Brahma soul chains behind him, Ni Yinger was trembling in agony as her body slowly bent down. Nearly half of her profound veins had been destroyed, and they were destroyed to the point where it would be impossible for them to be repaired. Her chaotic, profound energy swiftly drained from her body. "My mother, did you kill her?" This sudden and exceptionally abrupt question caused Ni Yuan's eyes to instantly narrow. After that, he let out a soft sigh as he said, "It looks like I really missed something back then. After all, having no gaps at all is really a big gap in and of itself." Ni Yinger's beautiful eyes suddenly focused as the last illusion within her shuddering heart and soul was completely shattered into oblivion. "It was really you, it was really you." "Heh heh," Ni Yuan gave a dry chuckle. Since you already guessed it and sensed it a long time ago, why did you never ask about it or believe it to be true? Was it because you didn't dare to? Or was it because you weren't willing to? He had frankly admitted it, and he was not the least bit worried about her finding out. One could even hear some disappointment and ridicule in his indifferent voice. Kaina Yinger's eyes started trembling even more intensely as her voice grew hoarse. Why? Why did you kill her? A big reason, perhaps it could even be said to be the biggest reason, why Kainai Fanchen had become the only weakness in Kainai Yinger's heart was because he had been good to her mother. It was why she would be willing to sacrifice all of her dignity to save him. Back when her mother had died, he had not only investigated her death himself, but also personally executed both the God Empress and the Crown Prince in a fit of rage. His actions had shaken the entire Brahma monarch God realm. But what was more important was that it had also deeply shaken Kainai Yinger, who had always been resentful towards her father. After that, he posthumously conferred her mother the title of God Empress, and also swore that she would be his last God Empress, his only God Empress. This, coupled with the trust, regard, and love that he showed her, meant that it was only natural that the feelings she had for her mother would gradually be transferred to her father. Thus, he became the person she trusted the most in the world, the person who was closest to her, and the only source of warmth and intimacy in her life. Even when she had those moments of doubt, she would firmly suppress those suspicions and think that they were doubts that she should not be having. However, everything had suddenly changed. Kainai Fanchen's tacit admission, coupled with the few words he had said after, were a destructive impact on Kainai Yinger's soul. It was such a cruel blow that no one else would be able to imagine it or put themselves in her shoes. Why? Kainai Fanchen wore a tragic and sorrowful expression on his face. Isn't the answer already as clear as day? Of course it's because of you. Your innate talent did not only surpass all of my other children, no one in your generation in the entire Eastern Divine region could match it either. This, coupled with the viciousness, single-minded focus, and ambition I could see in your eyes, made me feel as if I had witnessed the birth of the first female Brahma heaven god emperor. Compared to the successor that I had previously selected, your brilliance was far more dazzling. But alas, the you back then had a fatal flaw, and that fatal flaw was your excessive care for your mother. After that, I even found out that the most important reason for your fervency and ambition toward the profound way was actually because you wanted to obtain an even higher status for your mother. How pitiful that was, how laughable. Kainai Fanchen shook his head, and it was as if he still felt the pity and disappointment that he had felt back then. Thus, for your sake, and for the sake of the future of the Brahma monarch god realm, I had no choice but to act. I would lavish you and your mother with my undisguised affection before intentionally letting slip that you would become my successor. This would consequently arouse jealousy and panic in the hearts of the God Empress and the Crown Prince. From then on, their desire to kill you and your mother was only to be expected. Kainai Yinger clenched her teeth tightly as her entire body shook. Your mother died by my hands. This was a grave matter that concerned the future of the Brahma monarch god realm, so I could only do it myself. After that, I personally executed both the God Empress and the Crown Prince before posthumously conferring the title of God Empress upon your mother. Kainai Fanchen kept addressing them as the God Empress and the Crown Prince, and had not even mentioned their names once, because he had already forgotten their names. Even though they were once his personally chosen Empress and Crown Prince, they seemed to be nothing more than two specks of dust that had been swept away, not even worthy of being remembered by him. The reason why I had to go to such great lengths to orchestrate these events was because I was afraid that once your mother died, the feelings you had for her would have nowhere to go. I was even more afraid that you would lose your goal and ambition because of this. So I had no choice but to do what I did, causing the feelings you had for her to gradually migrate to me. You could even say that I put a lot of thought into your upbringing. But what I never imagined was that the memory of your mother still refused to dim, even though so many years had already gone by. Kainai Fanchen shook his head as he gave a sigh of lament. What a pity, what a pity. And what's even more tragic is that you seem to think that I was the one who caused the death of your mother. No, Kainai Fanchen said as he let out a sigh. In fact, I can't even remember her name or what she looked like. If it wasn't for some special reason, why would I have stooped to personally dealing with a woman like that with my own two hands? In the end, the one who caused the death of your mother wasn't me. It was you. If you had not been so dazzling and had not valued her so much, she would not have died such an early death. Ni Yinger's delicate head drooped inside that golden cage. Her body had not stopped shuddering for a single moment, and underneath her golden mask, streams of tears swiftly flowed down her face. Tears. No one had ever seen the Brahma monarch goddess tears before, and no one had ever imagined what it would look like to see the Brahma monarch goddess cry. But at this moment, from the very moment the first tear started rolling down her face, her tears flowed uncontrollably, just like how her heart and soul had completely collapsed. She stubbornly refused to let out a single sob, but she was not able to stop the tears leaking from her eyes. In her lifetime, she had witnessed countless deaths and seen more despair than she could even remember. But at this moment, it was the first time she had so clearly understood what despair was. This felt many times more cruel and painful than when Yuan Qi had planted the slave imprint on her. Ni Yinger, the Brahma monarch goddess admired by the entire universe, the future Brahma heaven god emperor. Her background, cultivation, status, authority, and appearance, every single one of them stood at the highest peak of this universe. Only the Western region's Dragon Queen was worthy of being mentioned in the same breath as her. She had undoubtedly stood at the pinnacle of this universe, and she had always held the rest of the world in contempt. This was especially true for men. Not a single one of them had ever truly caught her eye, even if that man was the #1 god emperor in the southern divine region. When the profound practitioners of the god realm mentioned the 3 words, Brahma monarch goddess, the words that accompanied that title were lofty and beyond one's reach. But today, it was only today that she discovered that her life had actually been so tragic all of these years. No, practically her entire existence was a tragedy. She thought that she was not only Ni Fanchun's chosen successor, but also the daughter that he loved and trusted the most, and the latter was even more important to her than the former. But it was only today that her eyes were finally opened. It turned out that she was actually only a doll dancing along on his strings, and it had always been the case. He did not just personally steal the most important thing in her life. He had even made her feel constant gratitude and respect towards him because of this. After she had used her own dignity to save him, she had instead become an abandoned child that he could not even be bothered to waste any effort on because of the sacrifice she had made. If I were to nurture you once more, it is true that you will be able to become the cornerstone of the Brahma monarch god realm once more. However, given our current situation, you have much more value as a gift to the Southern Sea God Emperor. You should rejoice in the fact that you, someone who has been stained and has been bereft of her Brahma monarch divine powers, would still possess such great value. Ah, but it's such a pity, Ni Fanchun said as he shook his head. Now that it has come to this, I have no choice but to select a new successor again. On this particular point, I truly do envy Yue Wuya. As he looked at Ni Yinger, whose mind and spirit had completely collapsed, there was not even a trace of love or pity in his eyes. Xia Qingyu doesn't even have a tenth of your experience, but in order to wash away the stain on her reputation, she sought to take Yuan Qi's lifetime and time again. She did not hesitate at all or leave behind any possible weaknesses to be exploited. She even destroyed her own birthplace. In comparison to her, you're truly far too stupid, so it's no wonder that you actually fell into her trap. At this moment, how could Ni Yinger not come to realize that the real reason why Ni Fanchun had given her the Brahma soul bell after he had been poisoned was to push her to sacrifice herself to save his life? But today, it had become his reason for discarding and even crippling her. What a farce. At this moment, she thought of Yuan Qi for some odd reason. The Yuan Qi who had immediately become a fugitive wanted by the entire universe after he had just saved the world. Just a few moments ago, she had still been mocking his fate and pitying his current situation. But at this moment, what difference was there between her and Yuan Qi? In fact, her life was even more tragic than his. At least, he still had someone who was willing to die to save him. At least, he still had the opportunity to escape. As for her, with the sole exception of her father, she had only given this world mercilessness and indifference. And the person who had suddenly thrust her into an abyss of suffering and despair just had to be the father that she trusted and respected the most, the father who had been the only weakness in her heart. She did not speak for a very long time as her profound energy continued to steadily flow out of her. However, the feeling of powerlessness that pervaded her entire body was even clearer and more intense than the loss of her profound energy. The world was very quickly turning ashen for her, and after that, that gray world of hers was quickly becoming dark and lightless. Ni Fanchun did not leave. The Southern Sea God Emperor would arrive very soon, and he needed to personally hand Xianxia Yinger over to him. After all, one had to personally make sure that all accounts were settled when bargaining chips were involved. Just like he had said before, given the Southern Sea God Emperor's rabid infatuation with Xianxia Yinger, he would not reject any requests that Xianxia Fanchen made in return. Even though Xianxia Yinger's profound strength had been crippled, she still possessed her face, a face which dazzled the world with its beauty, so he naturally had to exchange her for the greatest amount of value. As he sensed Xianxia Yinger's aura growing weaker and weaker, and her soul that was on the verge of complete collapse, a strange light flashed in Xianxia Fanchen's eyes before he finally took action and slowly extended his palm toward Xianxia Yinger. There was one more thing he had to do, and it was to take advantage of her mental breakdown and erase a portion of her memories. Because she knew far too many of the Brahma Monarch God Realm's secrets, especially the one concerning BZZZ. A faint sound suddenly rang from a distant underground sacred hall. At the same time, an aura which was incomparably unique and faint had also been sent out. Even though it was very weak and faint, he could still feel it. Furthermore, it was this incomparably weak but unique aura that suddenly caused Xianxia Fanchen's expression to change as he swiveled around. After that moment of shock, extreme excitement and wild joy appeared on his face. Because that aura had clearly belonged to the primordial seal of life and death. Could it be that they had finally found a way to activate the primordial seal of life and death's power of immortality? The third-ranked heavenly profound treasure, the primordial seal of life and death, was indeed hidden in the Brahma Monarch God realm. Immortality. There was nothing that could drive a God Emperor crazy like the chance at true immortality. His body suddenly shot forward without any hesitation or delay as he flew toward the source of the aura at the greatest possible speed. Just after Xianxia Fanchen left, the space beside Xianxia Yinger suddenly split open, and a hunched and withered gray figure swiftly shot out of it, a dark gold disc in his hands. It was Gu Zhu. Gu Zhu's hand curled into a claw, and immediately the golden light that twined around Xianxia Yinger completely disappeared. She sank limply to the ground, her dull and muddy eyes staring at the elderly man in front of her as she mumbled in a lifeless voice, "Uncle, Gu!" Clang. The dark gold disc in Gu Zhu's hand released a dense white light as a cluster of swiftly gathering spatial energy engulfed Xianxia Yinger. "Miss, run away. Run as far as you can, and never return. I hope that Miss will be able to live peacefully for the rest of her life." A spatial profound formation was formed from the white light as it spread out underneath Xianxia Yinger's body. Following Gu Zhu's words, a beam of light shot into the sky and disappeared along with Xianxia Yinger. At nearly the same time, Xianxia Fanchen, who had just left, suddenly returned. Gu Zhu also turned around, the dark gold disc in his hand directly cracking apart in his old and withered hand, destroying the possibility of using that spatial disc to teleport other people to its preset location. "Gu Zhu, good, very good." Xianxia Fanchen's face darkened dramatically. He had never imagined that the person who was least likely to betray him would actually trick him. He had tricked him for a crippled and discarded Xianxia Yinger. He could not be bothered with Gu Zhu as his hand fiercely shot out in the location where Xianxia Yinger had just been. There were still spatial traces that had still lingered in that area. Gu Zhu had long been prepared for this. Just as Xianxia Fanchen was about to approach, he thrust out his palm and met Xianxia Fanchen head-on. Boom! As space exploded, Xianxia Fanchen's body was pushed far away. His face went completely dark as he said, "Gu Zhu, how dare you?" As he said that, golden light suddenly flashed through his eyes. "Yuga!" In that instant, Gu Zhu's hunched body violently convulsed as an incredibly hoarse and pained low groan came from his mouth. Furthermore, countless slender golden marks appeared on his body, covering every inch of it. The Brahma Soul Death-Wishing Mark. Xianxia Fanchen no longer bothered with his Gu Zhu as his body lunged down once more, however. Gu Zhu, who was currently being afflicted by the Brahma Soul Death-Wishing Mark, suddenly rushed at him as he firmly clung onto Xianxia Fanchen's legs, obstructing him for an instant. And it was at precisely this instant that the last spatial traces swiftly faded away, making it no longer possible for him to give chase. "Miss has lived her entire life. For you, I beg you, let her off. This old slave is willing to work himself to the bone for the rest of his life as repayment. Please let Miss go." Bang. Gu Zhu was blasted far away by that kick. Xianxia Fanchen's expression was extremely ugly at the moment as he suddenly discovered that there were times when even he miscalculated. There were two reasons for him instructing Gu Zhu to remain at Qianai Yinger's side. The first reason was so that he could guide her growth and ensure her safety. The second reason was so that he could keep an eye on her, but he never would have thought that it would result in this. However, he still could not kill Gu Zhu. It was only several breaths later that Qianai Fanshan's rage finally simmered down. His brows sank as he sent out a sound transmission in a low voice. "Send this order out. Do a full sweep the entire eastern divine region to find traces of Yinger's whereabouts. The moment any of you find something, use every means possible to retrieve her. Remember, she must be taken alive." Given the spatial power of that disk, the energy that was gathered over that short amount of time would not be able to send someone too far away, so Qianai Yinger was definitely still within the eastern divine region. Realm, which had been deified for a period of time because of Yuan Qi, had undergone a complete and utter change compared to before. This was especially true in the Ice Phoenix realm, the place where the Ice Phoenix sect was located. Underneath the falling snow, there was a suffocating silence there that blanketed the entire realm. The Ice Phoenix realm was normally quiet throughout the year, but it had never felt so cold and desolate before. The news of Mu Xiunian's death had been conveyed to them a few days ago. A divine moon envoy from the moon god realm had personally conveyed the news to them. The Ice Phoenix realm had lost its sect master, and the Snow Song realm had lost its realm king. Even more than that, they had lost the core of what allowed them to stand loftily in the eastern region despite their status as Middle Star realm, the spiritual support of all of the Snow Song profound practitioners. No one could predict what the future of the Snow Song realm would look like, but a pessimistic and gloomy atmosphere silently pervaded every corner of the Snow Song realm. Heavenly Netherfrost Lake. The cold vein within the Heavenly Netherfrost Lake still existed, but the Ice Phoenix divine being was gone. Even though the entire region was still overflowing with very high-level ice energy, it had lost some of its indescribable divine aura. It was at this moment that the barrier that had been sealed for a very long time was soundlessly opened and closed. On the shores of the Heavenly Netherfrost Lake, a man appeared out of thin air. He was dressed all in black, and his black hair fell to his waist. For some odd reason, his appearance had caused the air in the entire region around the Heavenly Lake to become exceptionally heavy and oppressive. As he arrived in the air above the Heavenly Netherfrost Lake, he silently looked down at the lake water which had remained unfrozen since bygone eras for several breaths. He had a very ordinary face, a face that one might not remember even if one looked at it several more times, and the aura radiating from his body was robust and muddy. His profound strength was approximately in the beginning stages of the divine soul realm, and ice energy, which was all too common in the Snow Song realm, flowed throughout his body. No one knew who he was, and it was even less likely that anyone would connect him with Yuan Qi. A translucent and flawless crystal coffin that faintly glowed with divine light appeared before him. He lifted the woman slumbering within the coffin out of it, his movements slow and gentle. He expressed no joy or sadness, no rage or grief, and did not allow himself to cling to her. Instead, he slowly lowered his arms before watching her slowly and gently sink into the icy lake below, until her body completely vanished from his vision, vanished from his world. "Xiunian," he muttered in a soft voice, "the primal chaos is so vast, but the only place that will take me in me is that dark place. I know, that place is definitely the place that you hate the most. After all, your father was killed by people from that place. I won't allow the aura in that place to disturb your rest. Only this place is the most suitable as your resting grounds." The surface of the lake stopped rippling as it became completely still once more. Yuan Qi cast one last, long gaze at the lake before turning around and muttering to himself, "Xiunian, if there is a next life, would you still be willing to meet me again?" As his body blurred, he had already returned to the shores of the Heavenly Lake. He stretched out an arm, and immediately a distant piece of profound ice was sucked towards him. It tumbled through the air and smashed into the ground. A curled-up human was sealed inside that profound ice. The person inside saw an unfamiliar face through the layer of ice that sealed him in. Immediately, hope and pleading appeared in those dim eyes. If anyone saw this man, it definitely would not occur to them that he used to be one of the Eastern region's 4 god emperors, a figure who reigned imperiously over the rest of the god realm. Without saying a word to him, without even sparing him a single glance, Yuan Qi flicked a flinger and threw that chunk of profound ice into the primordial profound arc. At this time, a peculiar aura came from outside of the heavenly netherfrost lake. Yuan Qi's eyes shifted to the side, but he did not leave or conceal himself. He tapped the Ni Yuan Stone with his finger and restored his original aura before he wiped a hand over his face, restoring his true appearance. Very quickly, the barrier surrounding the heavenly netherfrost lake was opened and closed once more as a snowy celestial figure appeared in front of him. Mu Bingyun. Originally, only he and Mu Xuanian had been allowed to open the barrier around the heavenly netherfrost lake. Now Mu Bingyun could open it as well. Clearly, Mu Xuanian had left her sect master's engraved jade behind before she had departed. She had clearly left with the resolve to die. Yuan Qi and Mu Bingyun's eyes met, and even though it had clearly only been a few days, it seemed like it had been a lifetime. As she looked at Yuan Qi, the towering bosom beneath her snowy robes violently heaved as emotions that were far too complex shook her icy eyes. "You still dare to come back? I came to return her here," Yuan Qi replied. He walked towards Mu Bingyun while raising up a snow-white longsword in his hand. "This is her beloved sword, and also the symbol of the Ice Phoenix Sect Master. Palace Master Bingyun, please take it." As she looked at the Snow Princess sword that glinted with a flowing icy light, Mu Bingyun's eyes instantly misted over the Snow Princess sword had returned. But the Snow Song realm no longer had a Mu Xuanian, and she had also lost her most important and only relative forever. When her trembling snowy hand stretched out and grasped the Snow Princess sword, it seemed as if some of her aura still remained on it, and Mu Bingyun's body swayed. It had already been several days since the news of her death, and she thought that she had already accepted it. But at this moment, her heart and soul were in such intense pain that they felt like they were about to tear. "Pa!" She flung her arm out as she gave Yuan Qi a fierce backhanded slap with her white jade hand. Yuan Qi did not dodge or try to defend himself. He allowed the redness and intense pain to spread across his face. Mu Bingyun's hand froze in midair. As she looked at Yuan Qi's face, a face that was so calm it was terrifying, a face that did not show a hint of pain, she realized that she had not vented any of her rage or resentment. Instead, she felt the stinging pain in her heart deepen. In this world, nothing was more painful than loss, but if there was one thing more painful than loss, it would be betrayal. And he had experienced all of the loss in the world, the greatest betrayal in this world. No one felt more pain than him over the departure of Mu Xuanian. No one felt more resentment. This was especially true in regards to the hatred he held towards himself. Her hands started to shake and she unconsciously wanted to reach out and touch the red mark on his face. But in the end, her hand still slowly dropped down. "Big sister, if you could choose again, would you still let him enter your world once more? If I was able to choose again, would I still end up bringing him to the God realm?" "Palace Master Bingyun," Yuan Qi said in a soft voice, "the Snow Song realm may very well be implicated in my mess. Even without using me as an excuse, there are many old grievances you have with other star realms, and they will also flare up now that Xuanian isn't here anymore. I suggest that you depart from this place as soon as possible, too." As she tightly gripped the Snow Princess sword, Mu Bingyun stared at him and said in a low voice, "Even if I die, I will die in the Snow Song realm." Upon receiving that completely expected reply, Yuan Qi gave a small nod of his head. He did not speak any further and turned around and left. "Yuan Qi!" Behind him, Mu Bingyun's voice rang out from afar. "Remember this, your life was bought using Big Sister's life, so I won't allow you to die. Even if it's for the sake of revenge, you need to continue to live on. If you continue to behave like you did before, always risking your life recklessly for other people, Big Sister won't forgive you, and I also won't forgive you." Yuan Qi left the heavenly netherfrost lake without replying, his figure and aura completely vanishing from Mu Bingyun's sight and senses. Inside the quiet heavenly netherfrost lake, Mu Bingyun gently hugged the Snow Princess sword to her chest. Unknowingly, a crystalline tear drop silently fell, leaving a long trail of wetness on the body of the jade-white sword. She stretched out a finger to gently wipe the wetness away, and when she raised her delicate head, a cold and determined light filled her icy eyes. She knew that no matter how hard she worked, she would never be as good as her elder sister. The Snow Song realm that was bereft of Mu Xuanian would now be faced with countless dangers that it definitely would not have faced in the past. But she would not compromise or run away. Tomorrow, she would succeed the position of Ice Phoenix Sect Master and Snow Song Realm King. As long as she was still breathing, she definitely would not allow the Snow Song Realm to be harmed. After she put the Snow Princess sword away, her icy figure floated up in the air as she slowly departed. But it was at the very instant when she left the heavenly Netherfrost Lake that a strange, icy light suddenly shone from the center of the silent, heavenly lake. That was the complete Ice Phoenix sigil, and it was shining from some unknown place. It was clearly only a projected image, but it was so dense that it practically appeared solid. The icy light coming from it was so bright and radiant that it seemed to be a divine light that should not exist in this world. But it only existed for an exceptionally brief period of time, and it dissipated after a few breaths, never to appear again. 1 month later, the God Realm continued its pursuit of Yuan Qi. As time flowed by, the intensity of this search had not only failed to reduce, it was even increasing with each passing day. The scope of the search also swiftly expanded from the 3 divine regions to the lower realms, as various types of scrying profound artifacts were set up in the various regions to sniff out Yuan Qi's aura. The array of forces being assembled to search for him was no less grand than the force assembled to search for the evil infant back then. It was so grand that it caused countless profound practitioners to be shocked and mystified when they heard of it. However, even though they were searching for him with such intensity, they were actually unable to even find the smallest trace of Yuan Qi's aura. The heavenly slaughter star god was already extremely skilled at concealment in the first place, and after she became the evil infant, her ability to hide was unrivaled under the heavens. Thus, trying to track down her aura was indeed harder than scaling the heavens. However, even though Yuan Qi was extremely strong among the younger generation, this was an all-out pursuit being led by the King Realms. Given his aura and cultivation, which were both at the divine King Realm, how could he have hidden from them for such a long time? It was as if he had completely vanished from the face of the world. Gradually, more and more people were beginning to suspect whether he had ended his own life due to that immense pressure and despair. However, never in their wildest dreams would they have imagined that the person they were chasing after with all their might had walked past the spiritual senses and scrying profound artifacts belonging to the powerhouses of the King Realms countless times. No matter whether it was a person or a profound artifact, none of their auras had hesitated or stopped when they brushed past his body. He had stepped out of the eastern divine region, departing from the eastern part of the God Realm as he made his way north, arriving in a foreign world he had never been in before. It was also during this period of time that the news of the Brahma monarch goddess betraying and fleeing the Brahma monarch God Realm had started to swiftly spread, once again causing countless shock and alarm. One strange thing had happened after the other, and even the lowest profound practitioners with the dullest spiritual senses could faintly sense the change in the air. In the distant north, in a world enveloped by black energy, thud, thud, thud. It was an exceptionally quiet forest, but when one heard the sound of those footsteps which were not heavy at all, it caused one's hair to stand on end. The earth here was black and the sky was an oppressive grayish-white color. Even the sparse, withered trees and vegetation were a dark gray-black color. Even the air was gloomy and hazy, and this absolutely was not the occasional fog, but was something that had existed since time immemorial. This was not a world that was suitable for normal beings to live in. Even if a divine, profound practitioner came to this place, they would begin feeling an extreme oppressiveness and discomfort very soon. They would also start to imperceptibly turn jittery and panicked. Losing control of their emotions was a possibility as well. Their lifespan would silently leak away, as if it was being devoured by something. Even their profound energy would feel like it was being bound up by an invisible ghost, since it was a lot more strenuous and difficult to circulate it. As such, there were no profound practitioners from the eastern, western, or southern divine regions who had ever been willing to enter this world. In this dim and lonely world, a figure slowly strode out from the black mist. His arrival would not bring this world the vitality that it would normally bring. Instead, it caused it to be even more oppressive and ghastly, because his eyes and that barely perceptible aura that radiated from his body were even darker and more desolate than this world's. It was as if he was a revenant that had managed to return from the depths of hell. Northern divine region. His feet came to a stop in the heart of this black forest. As he faced this strange and terrifying world, the corners of his mouth slowly curled upwards as his lips curved into a sinister and wicked grin. In that instant, even the black fog that had existed in that place since time immemorial seemed to have solidified. The northern divine region. the smallest geographical region among the 4 regions. It was only about half the size of the Eastern Divine Region and 1/5 the size of the Western Divine Region. If the God Realm were to be divided into 10 parts, the area that comprised the Northern Divine Region would only make up one of these parts. Thus, it was natural that they had the least number of star regions as well. Even so, because the yin energy in the primal chaos was continuously dissipating, the territory of the Northern Divine Region was constantly shrinking. The understanding Yuan Qi had of the Northern Divine Region was limited to the notions of Land of the Devils and Devil Region, and he knew practically nothing else about it. However, this completely foreign world had become the only place he could dwell in right now. Because of the primal chaos yin energy that blanketed the entire Northern Divine Region, which was also known to the rest of the world as Darkness Devil energy, no one from the other 3 divine regions was ever willing to approach it or venture into it. However, it was not only because they did not want their lifespan and profound strength to be eroded away by Darkness Devil energy. It was also because the devils viewed them as enemies, just like they viewed the devils as enemies. Furthermore, this was the devil's home ground, and within this primal chaos yin energy, they could display the full might of their darkness profound energy, while the strength of the profound practitioners from the other 3 divine regions would be greatly suppressed. The moment these profound practitioners were discovered, their fates would be no different from when a devil who was traveling outside the Northern Divine Region was discovered by the profound practitioners of the other 3 divine regions. After he entered the Northern Devil Region, the Darkness Devil energy in this place did not give Yuan Qi any discomfort at all. It did not affect his body, profound veins, or mind. As he moved within the ever-present darkness and silence, he even felt a sort of strange comfort, and his heart was also colder and clearer than it had ever been before. A strange world, a land which was completely unfamiliar to him. Furthermore, he did not know a single person here, and he was truly all alone in the world right now. Yuan Qi did not stop after he entered the Northern Divine Region. Instead, he continued to delve deeper and deeper. It had to be said that the 3 divine regions were pursuing him with mad fervor, but their search had not yielded any results. So it was possible that members of the King Realms would step into the Northern Divine Region to search for him. But even members of the King Realms would not go further than the outskirts of the Northern Divine Region. There was practically zero chance that they would infiltrate deeply. As such, he did his best to go as deep as possible into the Northern Region. He needed to preserve his own life. To the current him, there was nothing more important than that. He traveled through one star realm after another, passing through one star region after the next. Life in the Northern Divine Region entered his gloomy eyes, one scene after the other. The environment of the Northern Divine Region was completely different from the environment of the Eastern Divine Region. This place was filled with death and darkness, and it was hard to see the light of a sun or moon. Combat and death was the one constant in this place. Combat between darkness profound beasts and between profound practitioners. In the Eastern Divine Region, conflicts were normally due to benefits or grievances, but in this place, conflict was for the sake of survival. That was right, to survive. In this dark and cruel world, only the strong survived. The reason they could become stronger was because they were willing to do anything and everything to get stronger. They would put their lives on the line for those extremely limited resources, and they left corpses strewn in their wakes. Yuan Qi calmly and indifferently observed all of these things happen around him. As he delved deeper into the region, the Darkness Devil energy was clearly becoming denser and purer, and the level of the star realms was also rising. Finally, after another month had passed, Yuan Qi came across his first middle star realm in the Northern Divine Region. He did not know where in the Northern Divine Region he currently was, nor did he know the name of the star realm he was in. Even though this was a middle star realm, there were exceptionally few living creatures in it. Even when he traveled through the dark forest, he still could not sense any signs of life. Yuan Qi had unknowingly arrived at an isolated and wild mountain range. There were more darkness-profound beasts here, and many pairs of bloodthirsty eyes stared at him from within the darkness. However, when these crazed and violent gazes came into contact with Yuan Qi's indifferent one, they immediately started to shake. After that, they began to slowly retreat before they started to flee in panic, and they did not stop until they had run very far away. R.I.P. A horrifying tearing sound rang in the air. It was the sound of sharp claws cutting through the air as a huge eagle of darkness, that was 300 meters long flew over Yuan Qi's head. Its sharp claws flickered with a soul-piercing cold light as they lunged forward and grabbed up one of the desperately fleeing darkness profound beasts before it flew off into the distant north. Yuan Qi's feet came to a halt at this moment. He walked to a withered tree in front of him and then sat on the ground. He closed his eyes without erecting a barrier. Very quickly, his breathing had grown calm and gentle in his heart, the darkness profound formation that Jia Yuan had left inside of him before she departed shone with a gloomy light. After that gloomy light was released, Jia Yuan's figure appeared inside Yuan Qi's soul. She looked at Yuan Qi, and it was as if she was standing in front of him. Heh! She gave a low and emotionless chuckle that sounded both mocking and sorrowful at the same time. In the end, you still activated the devil mark that I left behind. It looks like you've finally been forced into a corner. However, she had never imagined that this devil mark had been activated by Yuan Qi's extreme rage and malice only a few moments after she had left the primal chaos. Even though the activation of this devil mark had exposed his darkness profound energy in front of everyone, giving the three divine regions a proper reason to exterminate him. However, given the attitudes the three number one god emperors had towards him, even if they were not conveniently given this reason, they would still be able to find some other reason. The activation of this devil mark only brought all of these events forward. The darkness profound art, Eternal Calamity of Darkness, is sealed within this devil mark. It was not the core profound art of my heaven-smiting devil clan. Rather, it was a profound art that was unique to me alone, and my clansmen were not able to cultivate it. Even Ni Yuan, whose connection to and ability to control darkness profound energy was superior to mine, was not able to cultivate it. But if it's you, then there's definitely a chance that you can do it. She did not mention why she said that. You have Ni Yuan's profound veins, so you have an extremely close connection to and extreme control over darkness profound energy. As a result, the Eternal Calamity of Darkness, which would allow another person to scale the heavens in a single step, will only provide an extremely limited boost to your strength. Furthermore, its might is far inferior to the Devil God Forbidden Tome that Ni Yuan and I created together, which you also know as the Heretic God Arts. However, if you can perfectly control and use the Eternal Calamity of Darkness, you will definitely be able to have complete control of all the devils of the current age. You will become the true and only emperor among the devils. This was a memory left behind by Jia Yuan, and every word was coming from her own mouth, so they could not be doubted. Other than the Eternal Calamity of Darkness, all the devil arts I have cultivated in my life are also within the devil mark. You may choose to cultivate them as you please. How strong and complicated could all the arts a devil emperor had cultivated in her lifetime be? To any other person, cultivating even one of these arts would be something that would be hard to accomplish even if they tried for their entire lives. But she had left all of them behind for him, because she knew even better than Yuan Qi just what kind of freak he was. A freak that even surpassed the heretic god Ni Yuan. There are also 3 drops of my devil origin blood. They can strengthen your devilish body and soul. If you urgently desire to raise the level of your cultivation within a short period of time, then refining them will also be able to greatly boost the cultivation level of your profound way. However, it is best that you don't do such a thing. Even though refining them will allow you to scale the heavens in a single step, slowly and perfectly combining these drops of origin blood with your body will allow you to obtain future benefits that are 100 times better than the former. The lower your cultivation in the profound way is, the more your body and profound veins will be refined and upgraded by merging with these drops of origin blood. So for the coming period of time, you actually need to suppress your cultivation as much as possible, and I trust that you understand every single word I am telling you right now. The soul voice that Jia Yuan had left behind spoke in a very meticulous and detailed fashion. Even though she had always acted exceptionally cold and indifferent toward Yuan Qi whenever they met, the truth was that she always had a special concern for him. Perhaps it was because of the heretic god Ni Yuan, or perhaps it was because of hunger and Yuer. The origin of darkness profound energy is the primal chaos yin energy, so the Eternal Calamity of Darkness is also an extreme yin profound art. My devil origin blood is also an extremely yin blood, so both of these things are more suited for women. As a result, if you desire to swiftly cultivate the Eternal Calamity of Darkness, you need to find an exceptional woman and use her as your cultivation incubator. Out of these 3 drops of extremely yin origin blood, using 2 drops will be the absolute limit of what you can endure, so the 3rd drop is for the incubator to use. This woman needs to have her vital yin intact, and she also needs to have an extremely high comprehension of the profound way and extremely good control of profound energy. The most important thing is that she needs to possess extremely refined and pure profound energy. If you are able to find such a woman, it would be best to directly cripple her or allow her to get rid of all of her profound arts, leaving behind only the most refined and purest original profound energy. In the end, what she will obtain will be countless times greater than what she will lose. As he closed his eyes, Yuan-Chi slowly raised a hand in the air. 3 pitch-black droplets of blood floated above his palm. These 3 blood droplets flickered with a gloomy black light, and even though the light was not strong, it caused the surrounding area to darken dramatically. He opened his eyes, and 3 extremely deep and dark specks of light were reflected in his eyes. Without any hesitation, he fiercely pressed 2 of these blood droplets against his chest. The moment they came into contact with his body, these 2 dark blood droplets entered his body without any resistance, like mercury flowing over the ground. Bzzz. As a bizarre muffled ringing sound that was hard to describe resounded in the air, a dense and chaotic layer of dark mist suddenly burst out of Yuan-Chi's body. His eyes were also releasing 2 incomparably gloomy black lights, as if they had transformed into 2 dark abysses which would swallow up everything. This was no ordinary blood, but the blood essence of a devil emperor. If it were to directly enter the body of any other person, even if that person was one of the current god emperors of the king realms, they would be devoured and rent apart by the incomparably fearsome power of a devil emperor. But he was Yuan-Chi, and his profound veins possessed the highest degree of affinity in the universe towards darkness profound energy, no matter what level this power of darkness possessed. However, origin blood was not only the core blood essence of a being, it also contained its own soul, thus, it also felt a closeness towards Yuan-Chi that came from Jai Yuan herself. Yuan-Chi's body violently convulsed in pain, but his face was shockingly calm. He had already experienced the ultimate pain and despair in this universe, so what did this small bodily pain even amount to? After a few short breaths, the black mist that had been stirring agitatedly began to slowly disperse, and the black light being released from his eyes faded together with it. From now on, the 2 drops of Devil Emperor origin blood that had come from Jai Yuan existed in Yuan-Chi's body, and they had done so in such a simple and easy manner. They had not rejected him at all. It was impossible to predict. Even Jai Yuan herself would not be able to predict what sort of strange changes would occur to Yuan-Chi's body once her Devil Emperor origin blood had completely combined with his body, which possessed the heretic god's profound veins. She was also unable to predict how long her hoped-for perfect fusion would take. Tens of thousands of years, hundreds of years, or... The Devil Emperor origin blood entered his body, but it had not truly begun its slow fusion with his body. Yet Yuan-Chi suddenly felt an incomparably huge change to his senses and perception. His spiritual perception could penetrate even more darkness now. In fact, it had reached a level where it was twice as powerful as what it had been before. This was especially true for his ability to sense darkness auras. His perception of darkness auras was now incomparably clear, and he seemed to be able to clearly capture the movements of every single darkness element. This was a Devil Emperor's origin blood. Even the slightest interference that she made would have an enormous impact on the beings living in this era. The sounds coming from Yuan-Chi's body had gone completely quiet, but Jai Yuan's voice continued to resonate in his soul. Even though I am unable to personally witness what drove you to activate the Devil Mark, there is one thing that you must remember. If not for the fact that you possess his powers and have inherited his will, if not for the fact that you saved hunger and took care of Yuer, I definitely would not have decided to leave the primal chaos or betray my clansmen. So to the primal chaos realm that you are living in, you are fully worthy of the title of Messiah. This is especially true for the God realm. Every single person owes you their life, and no one has the right to betray you or let you down. If you want to take revenge, put down all of your hesitation, compassion, and pity. Even if you massacre all the living beings of this age, there is no need to feel any guilt, because this is what they owe you. Finally, there are 2 things that I should probably let you know about. The current primal chaos realm is hiding an immense secret and an immense hidden malaise. The heaven-smiting Devil Emperor had said the word immense twice, so it certainly was not something that the people of the current age could imagine or understand. As for this immense secret, I cannot tell you what it is, and I also don't have any right to tell you what it is. But if there ever comes a day where it shows itself to the world, you will surely be the first to know. At the same time, this is also the other reason why I chose to leave the primal chaos and block my clansmen's return. As for that immense hidden malaise, in the world of his soul, Jia Yuan's figure slowly raised a hand. A black light that looked like a cluster of stars shone on her fingertip. This is a memory fragment, and I've put a seal on it. On the day that you perfectly fuse with my Devil Emperor origin blood and are able to perfectly control the Eternal Calamity of Darkness, you will naturally and easily be able to break its seal. This sealed memory fragment was the immense hidden malaise that Jia Yuan was speaking of. Xianxia. The dark cluster of starlight floated from her hand into the deepest parts of Xianxia's soul. After that, Jia Yuan's voice grew gentler as she said, "When Ni Yuan was greatly disappointed and dispirited back in the day, he discarded his title of creation god and went into seclusion. But you, if you experience a similar situation, I hope that you do not choose to do what he did by holding fast to the light even though you are shrouded in darkness. I hope that you can take back what you lost millions of times over. At the very least, you definitely cannot allow Honger and Yuer to end up in their former situations. One was forced to discard her identity forever, and the other had no choice but to exist in eternal loneliness and darkness. This world does not have the right to let you and my daughters down. So after you have gotten a clearer picture of this world, I want to remember this phrase. It is better to betray the heavens than it is to ever betray yourself." Jia Yuan's figure disappeared from the world of his soul. Xianxia opened his eyes, and those eyes, which were as calm as still water, seemed to have grown even gloomier. "Eternal Calamity of Darkness." He muttered those words in a low voice as he took off a black stone that he wore on his right hand. The Ni Yuan Stone. The Ni Yuan Stone was the biggest reason why he was able to enter the northern divine region without any surprises or danger despite being hotly pursued by 3 different divine regions. As long as he wore it, the change in his aura coupled with his perfect disguise meant that even a divine master would not be able to recognize him, even if that divine master was standing only 10 steps away from him. His aura returned to normal, and he still remained seated on the ground. He slowly opened his arms, and once he closed his eyes, a pitch-black world spread out in front of him. The laws of darkness unique to the Eternal Calamity of Darkness floated within that pitch-black world, along with the Devil Emperor's own divine art. Jia Yuan had told him before that if a person wanted to perfectly cultivate the Eternal Calamity of Darkness, they had to be assisted by the Devil Emperor's origin blood. His first step, however, was not to merge his body with the origin blood, but to directly try to comprehend the Eternal Calamity of Darkness. This was the Devil Emperor profound art that Jia Yuan had personally told him that only she could cultivate, the profound art that even the heretic god could not cultivate. A thin layer of black energy slowly started to form over his body. This layer of black energy was very chaotic, as if it was comprised of countless dark shadows struggling to break out of their cage with all of their might. Time slowly flowed by, and this layer of black energy continued to accumulate as it grew denser and denser. It gradually rose to a height of over 100 meters, but it was becoming more agitated, and its struggles grew more violent. The surrounding area, which was already dark and silent in the first place, grew even more dreary and quiet, and one could not hear the cry of any beasts for a very long period of time. In the surrounding 50-kilometer radius, all of the profound beasts were fleeing in fear as profound beasts belonging to this dark world. Their temperaments were far more violent and irascible than the profound beasts found in other worlds, and none of them feared death. However, an odd terror that only continued to grow larger was birthed in the deepest depths of their hearts and souls. Their only recourse was to flee in the opposite direction, and they did not dare take even a single step back. They continued their flight until several days later, when the aura that had terrified them had started to recede. The agitation of the black energy rising up from Xianxia's body started to weaken as it started to gradually dissipate. 7 days later, the black-colored mist-like energy that was rising from his body had completely disappeared. Gradually, even his own aura and breathing started to weaken before they completely disappeared as well. Xianxia had sat under that withered tree throughout this entire process. He had not moved a single inch the entire time, resembling a corpse that had undergone rigor mortis. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. He continued in this aural state, and he still had not moved an inch. A thick layer of sand and dust had already accumulated over his body, mixing with dead leaves that had come out of nowhere. On this day, the air, which had remained heavy and stagnant for a very long period of time, suddenly started to quake abnormally. These unusual vibrations had originated from a long distance away. In the distant horizon, 2 human figures swiftly approached. One was a black-robed elder whose hair had already turned half white. The aura of the divine spirit realm rippled across his body. The person beside him was a girl clothed in purple. The black-robed elder's power allowed them to move very quickly, but the trajectory of their flight had started to sway. Upon closer examination, one would discover that the black-robed elder's body was actually completely stained in blood, and his eyes had suddenly started to go slack mid-flight. Following that, his body swayed violently before he and the young girl abruptly dropped from the air, causing the young girl to let out a startled scream of terror. Bang! The old man's body crashed into the ground, leaving a long trail of blood behind it, and it came to a stop less than 20 steps in front of Yuan-Chi. The dark dirt that had been thrown up by his fall fell on Yuan-Chi's body, but he still did not react. "Grandfather Qin!" The purple-clothed girl landed on the ground and started to stumble towards the fallen, black-robed old man. The girl had an exquisitely beautiful face. Her long hair was a mess, and that jade face was stained with flying dust and fear, but it still could not conceal what was undoubtedly an inborn air of nobility. Even the purple clothes she wore radiated an uncommon luxuriousness. "Grandfather Qin, how are you feeling?" Streaks of tears stained the girl's face as she sensed the elderly man's extremely chaotic and weak aura. Her heart suddenly felt like it was hanging over the edge of a cliff, and she was at a complete loss for what to do. She knew that he had been forcing himself to endure for the entire journey. The black-robed old man fiercely bit down on the tip of his tongue, and his slackened eyes managed to recover some of its clarity. He said in a weak and frail voice, "Your Highness, do not worry about me. Hurry up and leave." "No." Tears coursed down the young girl's face as she shook her head. "If it wasn't for the fact that Grandfather Qin had used his life to save me time and time again, I would have long ago. How can I abandon you just like that?" As she said these words, she started to move forward to carry the old man. She possessed cultivation that was at the level of the divine soul realm, and she definitely lorded over the rest of her peers in terms of power. But at this moment, she was exceptionally weak and frail, and she was nearly completely spent. She looked ahead, noticing the unmoving human that was sitting under a withered tree with a single glance. However, she did not spare him a second look, and she was not shocked either. In the northern divine region, there was nothing more common than corpses. The black-robed old man's face contorted as he tried his best to struggle free of the profound energy the girl had covered him with. He gave a low roar, "Your Highness, you must not let your emotions affect you. This old slave's life is petty, and if anything were to happen to your Highness, this old slave would feel 10 lifetimes worth of guilt and shame towards the king. Hurry up and leave. 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 Hee, you still think you can leave?" The old man's shrill cry was still ringing in her ears when a dark and cold voice accompanied by a mocking chuckle rang out in the air above them. Upon hearing that voice, the pupils of the purple-clothed girl's eyes shrank, and she turned around in fear and terror. The black-robed old man's face instantly turned deathly white, and a look of despair appeared in his eyes. 5 figures unhurriedly descended from the sky, and they were all clothed in gray robes. Even though there were only 5 of them, 4 of the 5 people were releasing an aura that was at the divine spirit realm. In this star realm, this was absolutely considered a shocking display of power. The young man who stood in the middle of them had just entered the divine tribulation realm, but he was undoubtedly the leader of the 5. As he gazed upon the purple-clothed girl who was filled with fear and hatred, the corner of his mouth curled up into a mocking, sinister smile, a smile one displayed when facing one's prey. "Princess Hanwei, you really did lead me on a wild chase." "Ming, Yang." The purple-clothed girl gritted her jade teeth, and a thin sword that flickered with purple light had already appeared in her hand. The body of the sword coursed with both cold energy and darkness profound energy. But her body, and the hand that held the sword, had already started to shake violently. "Tusk, tusk." As he looked at the hate-filled expression on the girl's jade face, Ming Yang licked the corner of his lips as he slowly drew near. "You are indeed worthy of being called the #1 beauty of the Eastern Frost Nation. Even your enraged appearance is still so moving." If I had truly let you escape, how big of a loss would that have been? Even if I flattened the entire Eastern Frost nation, it still wouldn't make up for it. He eyed the fallen elder, his gaze turning dark. Old man Qing, you've spoiled my plans time and time again. It's about time for you to suffer the consequences. You... The black-robed old man struggled to stand as his body, a body which was heavily injured and on the brink of collapse, was filled with the power of despair. Even if I die, I still won't allow you to touch a single strand of Her Highness' hair. Ming Yang laughed as he said, Good, then you can go right ahead and die. He waved a hand, and a strange blade of wind that was mixed up with black energy instantly slashed the old man's body. Ow! The black-robed old man let out a low groan as he was sent flying, leaving an arrow of blood in his wake. He was a distinguished divine spirit realm profound practitioner, but in his current condition, he could not even endure a casual blow from someone of the divine tribulation realm. The direction flew in was precisely where Yuan Qi was located. With a deep thud, his body heavily smashed into Yuan Qi's body, instantly shattering the withered tree behind them. Yuan Qi's body, which had remained still for more than 10 days, was sent flying along with the old man as he rolled on the ground. Grandfather Qin! With a sorrowful cry, the young girl rushed towards the old man's side. This time, the old man was no longer able to stand up. Foamy blood continued to gush out of his trembling mouth, and he could not make a single sound. The purple-clothed girl's eyes fell, and her heart was filled with boundless grief and sorrow. She knew that there was no way for her to escape today's calamity. She slowly drew back the purple sword in her hand before placing it against her snowy neck. She would rather die than be humiliated. But Ming Yang had already anticipated her actions long before they had happened. At nearly the same instant, the gray-robed man on his right shoved his arm out, and immediately, a huge energy current fiercely enveloped the girl and pressed down on her body. How could she, a profound practitioner of the divine soul realm, be able to resist or struggle against suppression that had come from a profound practitioner of the divine spirit realm? In an instant, she felt as if 10,000 mountains were pressing down on her body as she fiercely fell to her knees, the sword tumbling out from her hand. This suppression was not merely limited to her body. Even her profound energy had been completely suppressed, and she was not be able to destroy her own life vain even if she wanted to. Her entire body shook, and she clenched her teeth so hard that they nearly cracked, but she was unable to break free at all. Only a despair that resembled a deep abyss steadily approached her. Ming Yang, you definitely won't die a good death. You want to die? Even if you could bear to, how could I? Ming Yang started to slowly saunter over towards her with an avaricious and lustful dark light radiating from his eyes that had already narrowed into 2 long and narrow slits. But it was at this moment that his gaze suddenly turned away. A human figure, the human they had all thought was a corpse, started to slowly climb to his feet. Amen. Ming Yang frowned, and everyone's eyes had unconsciously turned towards that man as well. As Yuan Qi, whose cultivation had been interrupted, stood to his feet, he did not brush off the dirt on his body, nor did he turn around to look at any of the people behind him either. He simply started moving forward as he prepared to find a quiet place to cultivate once more. Perhaps it was because his body had been still for too long that his footsteps were rather stiff and heavy. Ming Yang frowned once more. Seeing a corpse suddenly come to life was also not anything new in this corpse-strewn northern divine region. But after this person had gotten up, he had not even spared them a single glance. In this region, who would dare to ignore him in such a manner? This feeling of being ignored made him extremely unhappy. The corners of his mouth curled up as he issued the most idiotic command he would ever issue in his entire life. This eyesore of a brat, cripple him. To him, killing a random passerby was no different from killing a dog or a chicken. The gray-robed man beside him did not even move his body. He merely moved his arm, causing a pitch-black wind blade which vibrated with faint spatial ripples to slash toward Yuan Qi. In an instant, it collided against Yuan Qi's back. The purple-clothed girl closed her eyes. She was unwilling to see the miserable scene of this innocent person's annihilation, an innocent person who she had dragged into her own circumstances by complete accident. However, what rang in her ears was actually a thunk. As the dreadful blade of dark wind collided against Yuan Qi's back, the sound that rang out was actually the sound of something hitting metal. The wind blade was instantly deflected, leaving a long furrow in the ground beside him. But his back, even his outer clothes, had not been harmed, much less his body. Yuan Qi's footsteps ground to a halt before he started to slowly turn around. One pair of dark and gloomy eyes looked towards 5 pairs of eyes that had instantly constricted in fright and shock. Ah, this! The face of the gray-robed expert who had just attacked went completely stiff, and he could barely believe his own eyes. Yuan Qi raised an arm and slowly extended a finger, pointing it at the person who had attacked him. After that, he spoke in a dark and low voice. Was being alive not good enough? Bang! A beam of fiery light exploded in front of everyone. Within that fiery light, the divine spirit expert who had attacked instantly burst into countless fiery fragments. And in the next instant, those fiery fragments transformed into drifting ash. He did not struggle at all, nor did he even have time to let out a cry of misery. Divine spirit realm profound practitioners were considered the absolute powerhouses in this region. But one of them had just been instantly annihilated by an attack launched from this man's finger. It was as if he had butchered a small dog.